Chapter 727. Swoosh. Ji Tianqing's soul consciousness immediately left the depths of his soul and returned to his body. He slowly opened his eyes and saw that he was still sitting in the secret chamber, motionless on the ground. Just now, his battle with the ancient heart devil and his cultivation of the white heart devil subduing art had all happened in his soul consciousness. Luckily, he had mastered the heart demon subduing spell and got rid of the heart demon. When he circulated his energy to check the condition of his body, he found that the blood dissipation curse in his body had been removed. Originally, the blood dissipation curse had invaded his body and sealed him in ice like a statue. But now, he had gotten rid of the blood dissipation curse and his body was back to normal. Not only that, but Ji Tianqing was also surprised to find that his body had been tempered and strengthened by more than 2 times. He had secretly reached the 6th level of Sky Origin stage. He had achieved the ultimate sword body. He was surprised and confused at the same time. I just got rid of the heart demon and the blood dissipation curse. How did it strengthen my body and increase my cultivation level? How did I achieve the ultimate sword body? He thought for a while and soon understood the reason. The blood dissipation curse had invaded his internal organs and bone marrow, causing them to be stiff and necrotic. His body was almost dead. But he had mastered the heart demon subduing spell and got rid of the blood dissipation curse. The heart demon subduing spell's sacred power had also repaired his internal organs and bone marrow. First it was destroyed and then repaired. That was the process of strengthening and refining. That was why he could achieve the ultimate sword body and reach Sky Origin stage level 6. This is great. This is a blessing in disguise. Not only did I get rid of the blood dissipation curse, I mastered the heart demon subduing spell and achieved the ultimate sword body. My cultivation level has also increased by 1 level. Now that I have achieved the ultimate sword body, my speed, strength, and defense have all reached the pinnacle. My combat power has also increased by more than 2 times. Plus, I have mastered the heart demon subduing spell. It is a spell that can suppress the demons. If I meet any powerful demons in the future, I will be able to kill them easily. Ji Tianqing was excited. He was happy that he had survived a disaster. He quickly stood up and walked around in the secret room to stretch his limbs. I don't know how long I've been in the secret chamber. Yao Yao should be awake by now, right? She must be very worried and anxious to see me, right? Ji Tianqing suddenly thought of this question and walked towards the door of the secret room. He couldn't wait to see Yun Yao so that she wouldn't worry. Outside the door of the secret chamber, several powerhouses were currently gathered. Yun Yao, Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, Ling Yichen, Fox Princess, the little black dragon and the little ice fox had been waiting outside for 5 days. In the past 5 days, more than a dozen princes and divine masters had visited Tianqing Palace. When everyone found out that Ji Tianqing had not appeared, they all left. However, Yun Yao, Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, Ling Yichen and the others never left. Everyone's mood became more and more sorrowful, and the atmosphere became more and more sorrowful and bleak. Everyone knew that after 5 days, the power of the blood dissipation curse had long been exhausted. Ji Tianqing still hadn't appeared, and there was no movement in the secret chamber. He must be dead. Long Yunxiao's mood was also very sorrowful. However, when he saw Yun Yao's despondent and disheartened appearance, he suppressed his sorrow and advised her, Yao Yao. We should go. His voice was a little low and dry. Clearly, it wasn't easy for him to say these words. Yun Yao didn't say anything. She only shook her head lightly. Her tear-filled eyes were still staring at the door of the secret chamber. She didn't want to look away for even a moment. Long Yunxiao had already expected her to react this way. He advised, Yao Yao, we all know how vicious the power of the blood dissipation curse is. Tianqing sacrificed himself so that you could live well. If he saw you so sorrowful, his heart would definitely ache. Kun Wu, Ling Yi-ju, and Fox Princess couldn't bear to see Yun Yao's overly sorrowful appearance. They all comforted her. Yun Yao, Tianqing is infatuated with you. That's why he made such a decision. As the saying goes, you will get what you ask for. Only if you live well will you be worthy of his efforts. Although we also pray for Tianqing and hope that he can create a miracle, 5 days have passed. The hope is too slim. Yun Yao, you must pull yourself together. Hearing everyone's advice, Yun Yao still stared at the stone door and said in a low but determined voice, "If you don't want to wait, then leave." "I won't leave. Even if there's only a sliver of hope, I won't give up. I believe in Tianqing. I've gone through so many storms with him, and he survived so many life and death situations. This time, he will also create a miracle. He said that he would grow old with me hand in hand and would never abandon me. I believe in his promise. He won't leave without me." Yun Yao's eyes were filled with tears, and her voice trembled as she spoke. Everyone could feel her sorrow and sorrow. Their hearts clenched, and their eyes reddened. At this moment, a few more powerhouses arrived at Tianqing Palace and came to the corridor outside the secret chamber. Among these powerhouses, the leaders were Divine Masters Wulong and Qian Yi. Ji Tianqing's mentor, Divine Master Clearcloud, was also here. Behind the 3 Divine Masters were Murong Lingfeng and a few other human princes. They were all here to check on the situation. The 3 Divine Masters walked to the door of the secret chamber and looked at the tightly shut stone door. Their eyes dimmed. Divine Master Wulong looked at the sorrowful crowd and said in a solemn voice, "Everyone, 5 days have passed. Prince Tianqing's chances of survival are very slim. There's no movement in the secret chamber. Prince Tianqing definitely didn't turn into a demon, but he must have been corroded into blood and ashes by the power of the blood dissipation curse. Everyone, disperse. There's no point in waiting any longer." After he finished speaking, a few princes turned and left. The 3 Divine Masters stopped for a moment, shook their heads, sighed, and left as well. Outside the secret chamber, only Yun Yao, Long Yunshao, Kun Wu, and Ling Yichen were left. They were the princes who were on good terms with Ji Tianqing. Of course, Murong Lingfeng did not leave. He glanced at the heartbroken Yun Yao and the sorrowful crowd. A mocking sneer flashed across his eyes. "Huh. 5 days have already passed. Ji Tianqing must have died without leaving even dregs behind. What are you all still waiting here for? Haven't you given up yet? Do you really think that Ji Tianqing can still create a miracle? Ha ha ha. Even the Divine Masters are helpless against the blood dissipation curse. Ji Tianqing is not a god. How can he break the curse?" Everyone was sorrowful. Murong Lingfeng, on the other hand, was full of pride and joy. Long Yunshao, Kun Wu, and the others instantly turned around and glared angrily at him when they heard him. Their eyes were filled with dense rage and killing intent. Yun Yao also turned around slowly to look at Murong Lingfeng. Her eyes were extremely cold and filled with murderous intent. Murong Lingfeng could not help but sneer when he saw everyone's reaction. "What's the point of glaring at me? Let's hurry up and collect Ji Tianqing's corpse. Oh, I forgot. He must have turned into a pool of blood. Not even a corpse is left." Ha ha ha. Long Yunshao and Kun Wu were furious. They clenched their fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. They could not help but want to teach Murong Lingfeng a lesson. This fella's mouth was too vicious. However, at this moment, the stone door of the secret chamber that had been motionless all this time suddenly moved. Along with a muffled rumbling sound, the tall and heavy stone door actually slowly opened. Chapter 728. When the heavy stone door slowly opened, everyone outside the door was stunned. Everyone instantly quieted down and stared at the door of the secret room with their eyes wide open. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Everyone's breathing and heartbeat stopped. When the heavy dark brown stone door completely opened, a handsome and tall figure appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned. This handsome and valiant young man in a white robe was the person everyone had been waiting for, Ji Tianqing. He didn't look weak or injured at all. Instead, he was in high spirits and exuded a confident and powerful aura. There was a hazy golden spiritual light in the secret room that enveloped his figure and formed a hazy illusion. It made him look holy and majestic, like a god that had descended from the heavens. Everyone couldn't help but recall what Murong Lingfeng had said just now. Even the god-tier masters were helpless against the blood dissipation curse. Ji Tianqing isn't a god. How can he dispel the curse? Murong Lingfeng's words were still ringing in their ears, but Ji Tianqing had appeared safe and sound. He wasn't injured at all, and he was in high spirits. His aura was holy and majestic, just like a god. This was a miracle. Everyone's expressions became extremely interesting. They all revealed looks of disbelief, as if they had seen a miracle. Yun Yao, who had been the most sorrowful, was the first to come back to her senses. She stared at Ji Tianqing, and the sorrow in her heart disappeared. Her pale and bloodless face regained its vigor, and she revealed a smile. She cried tears of joy. The tears that had accumulated in her clear eyes immediately gushed out, and large teardrops rolled down her face. When Ji Tianqing looked at her with a gentle smile and gentle eyes, she couldn't hold back her excitement anymore. She stepped forward and threw herself at Ji Tianqing. Tianqing! She shouted in surprise and threw herself into Ji Tianqing's arms. She stretched out her arms and tightly hugged his neck. She lowered her head and buried it in Ji Tianqing's chest. The tears in her eyes flowed out uncontrollably. At this moment, she didn't care about the title of empress or the image of a fairy. She tightly hugged Ji Tianqing, who had almost died, and did not want to be separated from him for even a moment. Ji Tianqing's eyes were filled with tenderness. He held Yun Yao's slender waist with one hand and held her head with the other, gently stroking her beautiful hair. Yao Yao, don't cry. I'm fine now. I've said it before, I'll accompany you until we're old, and I'll never abandon you. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's heart was also surging with emotions. Even if there were thousands of words to say, in the end, it only turned into this one oath. Other than this, he couldn't find a more suitable word to describe his current feelings. At this moment, the little black dragon and Xian Yu also came to their senses, and they let out excited cheers as they rushed over to Ji Tianqing. Old Ji! It's great that you're all right. I've long known that our old Ji is immortal. He's either creating a miracle, or he's on the way to creating a miracle. In the past 5 days, the little black dragon and Xian Yu had been grieving and heartbroken. The two of them had been standing guard outside the secret room, not leaving even a single step, waiting for Ji Tianqing's safe return. Even though 5 days had passed and everyone was in despair, they still refused to give up, firmly believing that Ji Tianqing could create a miracle. Now, reality had proven that Ji Tianqing did not disappoint them. Ji Tianqing looked at the little black dragon and Xian Yu with a gentle gaze, revealing a faint smile. Immediately after, Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, Ling Yi, and the others all came to their senses. Everyone revealed an excited expression and let out shocked exclamations. Long Yunxiao said with a face full of joy, Tianqing, this lord didn't misjudge you. No matter how dangerous it is, you can always turn danger into safety. Kuan Wu breathed a sigh of relief, nodding with a face full of smiles, Ji Tianqing, you're finally safe. We didn't wait for you in vain. This lord had long guessed that with your ability, how could you fall in this calamity? Ling Yi was also excited, his face flushed red. He waved his fist at Ji Tianqing and shouted excitedly, Junior brother Ji, it's our clan's fortune that you're safe and sound." Everyone was filled with excitement and gratification. They were all in high spirits. Even the demon race's first empress, Fox Ji, was excited. She felt gratified and happy for Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's love of life and death made her full of gratitude and admiration. However, there was one person who was not happy. Instead, his expression was ugly, shocked and angry. This person was Murong Lingfeng. His eyes widened in shock, staring at Ji Tianqing. He roared angrily in his heart, "How could this be? How is this possible? Ji Tianqing, this bastard. How could he not die? How tough is his life?" Soon, he realized that not only was Ji Tianqing safe and sound, but his strength and aura had also doubled. He had become even more mysterious. Murong Lingfeng used his spiritual sense to check and realized that Ji Tianqing's strength had increased. He had reached the 6th level of Sky Origin stage. This result made him dumbfounded. He was so shocked that he was dumbfounded. Motherfucker. How is this possible? He suffered the blood-dissipating curse. Not only did he not die, but he also benefited from the disaster and increased his cultivation by 1 level? Is there any justice in this world? What did he do? How could he be so strong? Murong Lingfeng's face turned green. His heart was filled with anger. He was so angry that he could barely speak. When Murong Lingfeng saw Ji Tianqing being surrounded by the crowd, chatting and laughing excitedly, he was so angry that his vision turned black. He couldn't stay any longer. He suppressed his anger and turned around to leave with a dark face. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing looked at him with a faint smile. He asked, "Master Murong, I vaguely heard you say that you are here to collect my body?" Yun Yao, Long Yunxiao, and the others quieted down. They all turned around to look at Murong Lingfeng with unfriendly eyes. Murong Lingfeng stopped. He didn't say anything with a dark face. Ji Tianqing smiled coldly. He said in a mocking tone, "I am not your father. Why are you collecting my body? Master Murong, you are so filial. You should keep it for your father." Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, and the others were stunned. They couldn't help but laugh out loud. Murong Lingfeng was so angry that he almost fainted. His face turned purple. His chest was heaving up and down as if he was going to spit out a flame of anger. He was so angry that he almost spat out blood. He could only suppress his anger and leave quickly without saying a word. Of course, he was so angry that he was trembling. He staggered as he walked. He looked like a mess. Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, and the others saw Murong Lingfeng leaving in a mess. They burst into laughter again. Chapter 729. Everyone chatted with Ji Tianqing outside the secret chamber for a while before taking their leave one after another. Kuan Wu, Ling Yi Xiong, and Fox Princess left, but Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao stayed. Ji Tianqing led the two into the study room, closed the door, and started to discuss matters. After the three of them sat down, the study room quieted down, and the atmosphere became solemn. Ji Tianqing said with a serious face, "Although I am out of danger and have successfully removed the curse, this matter is not over yet. I have analyzed this matter before, and I feel that there is something fishy about it. There must be something wrong. Son of Heaven, Yao Yao, tell me the whole story from the beginning to the end." Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao nodded in agreement. Obviously, they also felt that there was something wrong. Long Yunxiao started with the conflict between Yun Yao and Ansuan, and narrated the entire story from beginning to end. After Ji Tianqing heard it, he frowned and said with a serious tone, "It seems that the conflict between Yao Yao and the heavenly concubine, the disappearance of the heavenly concubine, and the trap set by the demon king Xueqian Jiang are all related. I suspect that someone is deliberately instigating the relationship between Yao Yao and the heavenly concubine, making them fight each other. Long Yunxiao frowned and asked with doubt, if someone is really doing this, what is their purpose? Of course it is you. Ji Tianqing stared at Long Yunxiao and said with a serious tone, because you are the key person between the two of them. Me? Long Yunxiao was even more confused. Ji Tianqing did not continue to explain, and said with a calm tone, we can analyze it in reverse. If Yao Yao and the heavenly concubine completely break off their relationship, who will benefit the most? Who can clearly grasp our movements, and play the role of instigating them at the crucial moment? Yunyao frowned and pondered. Hearing his reminder, she suddenly thought of something. Her eyes flashed as she looked at Ji Tianqing beside her and asked, Tianqing, are you suspecting Lan Huixin? Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, ever since we met Lan Huixin and she humbly begged to stay by your side, I've been suspicious of her. She was originally the #1 genius beauty of the Long Heaven domain. Not only could she marry into a rich and powerful family as a madam, she could also cultivate diligently and become a famous martial arts genius. But why would she bow and scrape to stay by your side, even willing to be a maid? I don't believe that she has no ulterior motives. Yunyao nodded her head in agreement and said, Lan Huixin has always dreamed of becoming a heavenly consort, a sparrow flying to a branch to become a phoenix. If the heavenly concubine and I were to completely break off our relationship, of course, it would be most beneficial to her. Perhaps she would be able to take advantage of the situation. Hearing this, Long Yunxiao hurriedly waved his hand and explained solemnly, impossible. Even if I don't marry for the rest of my life, I would never take a fancy to Lan Huixin. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao ignored him and didn't react at all. Yunyao continued, moreover, the initial cause of this matter was Lan Huixin telling me that the emperor visited Yunyao Palace several times and had something important to discuss with me. After I went to Yunxiao Palace, I ran into the heavenly consort and Suwan and had a conflict with her. Long Yunxiao suddenly understood and nodded repeatedly, so that's how it is. No wonder Yao Yao suddenly came to find me that day. I thought she had something important to discuss with me. I didn't expect that it was actually Lan Huixin who deliberately instigated things. It seems that the heavenly consort didn't eavesdrop on our conversation in the side hall that day by chance. It's very likely that she was instigated by Lan Huixin. After the three confronted each other and analyzed the situation, the truth was immediately revealed. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then said in a solemn tone, Lan Huixin is so scheming, sinister, and despicable. She must be eliminated. She can't be allowed to continue staying in Yunyao Palace. However, these are only our speculations. We don't have any real evidence, so we can't convict her. Yunyao also looked angry and said in a cold voice, if it weren't for Lan Huixin's instigation, there wouldn't be so many twists and turns. The heavenly consort and I wouldn't be in prison, and Tianqing wouldn't have almost lost his life. I treated her like a sister, but I didn't expect her to be so vicious. We must get rid of her. Otherwise, it will be difficult to dispel the hatred in my heart. To Yunyao, Ji Tianqing was the most important person. It was fine if Lan Huixin tricked her, but she almost killed Ji Tianqing. This was an unforgivable capital crime. Long Yunxiao was also filled with anger, and a trace of killing intent appeared in his heart. But without evidence, he couldn't convict Lan Huixin. He could only think hard about how to find evidence. The three of them were silent for a while. Then, Ji Tianqing suddenly thought of something and smiled. I got it. I have a way to make Lan Huixin give herself away very soon. Long Yunxiao and Yunyao's eyes suddenly lit up, and they looked at him expectantly. What is it? Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile and said in a low voice, Lan Huixin only instigated a dispute between Yao Yao and the heavenly consort. She didn't have the right to leave the monarch mansion without permission. But later, when the heavenly consort left the monarch mansion, she was immediately knocked out and kidnapped by a mysterious powerhouse. This means that Lan Huixin must have an accomplice. It's very likely that the accomplice is that mysterious powerhouse. Didn't Yao Yao just say that she suspects that the mysterious powerhouse is Murong Lingfeng? If that's the case, we can do this. Ji Tianqing told Long Yunxiao and Yun Yao about his idea. The two of them immediately nodded in agreement and looked expectant. Good. Let's do it. This is a good idea. It will definitely make her reveal her flaws. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. If that's the case, then let's not delay any longer. We'll take action immediately to avoid any unexpected changes. Yun Yao and Long Yunxiao nodded in agreement. They immediately followed him out of the study and began to take action. After Yun Yao left Tianqing Palace alone, she rushed back to Yun Yao Palace as fast as lightning. She had just sat down to rest when Lan Huixin walked into the hall with a bowl of spiritual tea. Sister Yun, you're finally back. Please have some tea. Yun Yao calmly picked up the teacup and tasted the tea silently. Lan Huixin stood aside and pretended to be concerned. Sister Yun, you've been in Tianqing Palace for 5 days. You've made me worried sick. By the way, how's young Master Ji? Has he broken the curse? Yun Yao nodded and said in a relieved tone, fortunately, Tianqing is extraordinary. He's already out of danger. Lan Huixin was a little disappointed, but she still put on a pleasantly surprised expression. That's great. Young Master Ji is indeed lucky. Sister Yun, you can finally rest assured. Yun Yao smiled and continued, not only has Tianqing woken up, but we've also found a useful clue. We already know who kidnapped the heavenly consort. Lan Huixin was shocked when she heard this news. However, she didn't show it on her face. She pretended to be curious and asked, Sister Yun, who did you find? Chapter 730. Yun Yao was still calm and indifferent. She didn't have her guard up against Lan Huixin at all. When she heard Lan Huixin's question, she subconsciously said, that reckless guy is actually Murong. Speaking up to hear, Yun Yao suddenly realized something and hurriedly shut her mouth. However, when Lan Huixin heard the word Murong, her body suddenly trembled. A strange look flashed in her eyes. At this moment, Yun Yao took out a square black iron box from her sleeve. The iron box was made of cold cloud iron. It was abnormally strong and tough. Moreover, the surface of the box was engraved with array patterns and patterns. It was tightly sealed. According to that clue, we found a piece of evidence. This piece of evidence can pin down the mastermind. We have to continue our investigation in the next 2 days. When we find more clues, we can present this piece of evidence to the imperial court. That bastard dared to kidnap the heavenly consort. This is a capital offense that will result in the execution of his entire family. When the time comes, not only will that bastard be executed by the imperial court, but even his family will be severely punished by the imperial court. Yun Yao held the fine iron box with both hands as she spoke in a cold and stern tone. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. Lan Huixin quickly nodded in agreement. She also said angrily, Sister Yun is right. That guy really deserves to die. He dared to offend the imperial court. He should be severely punished. After she finished speaking, she secretly looked at the box and memorized its shape and patterns. Yun Yao held the iron box and walked to the bedroom. She calmly ordered, All right, Huixin, you can leave first. I want to rest for a while. Yes. Lan Huixin bowed and quickly left the room. However, after she left the room, she hid by the window and secretly peeked at the scene in the room. Yun Yao held the iron box and walked to the innermost side of the room. She pressed a mechanism on the wall and opened the secret compartment protected by the array. The secret compartment was embedded in the wall. It was almost impossible to see from the outside. It was very hidden. Yunyao carefully put the evidence into the secret compartment. Then, she sat on the bed and meditated to rest. Seeing this scene, Lan Huixin frowned and quietly turned to leave. She remained calm and collected as she quietly left Yunyao Palace. Riding a spirit bird, she flew into the sky at lightning speed. About an hour later, the spirit beast flying bird landed outside the gate of the towering Wind Palace. After exchanging a few words with the guard, she was led through the gate by the guard. Half an hour later, she met Murong Lingfeng in a secret room filled with spiritual qi. Murong Lingfeng's expression was very cold. There was still anger in his eyes, and the anger in his heart had not dissipated. Obviously, Ji Tianqing's previous words had angered him too much. Seeing Murong Lingfeng enter the secret room, Lan Huixin quickly bowed and greeted him respectfully, "Young Master Murong." Murong Lingfeng walked to the throne in the secret room and sat down. He asked with an expressionless face, "Why have you come to find this young master?" Lan Huixin did not dare to talk nonsense. She quickly said, "Young master, Yunyao just returned to her residence and told me that she found some clues about who kidnapped the heavenly concubine." She had inadvertently mentioned the word Murong, but she didn't say anything else. Also, she found a piece of evidence. Lan Huixin told her everything that had happened before and what Yunyao had said, word for word. After Murong Lingfeng heard it, he immediately frowned. His eyes became gloomy and cold. He pondered silently and thought to himself, they actually found evidence? And they have to hand it over to the imperial court? How is this possible? This young master is very meticulous. I will never leave any evidence behind. However, this matter is very important. There must not be any mistakes or accidents. Could it be, when this young master was fighting with that demon Xueqianjiang, I accidentally left some evidence behind? It's very likely. Only when this young master was fighting with Xueqianjiang in Yanhui Mountain would there be a mistake. Thinking of this, Murong Lingfeng's mood became more and more irritable. Yunyao, that bitch. And Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao, those two bastards, they will all die a horrible death. If they really found the evidence and handed it to the imperial court, not only will this young master be executed by the imperial court, even the Murong family will suffer. No way. This young master will not let them succeed. Murong Lingfeng thought for a moment and immediately made up his mind. He ordered coldly, Lan Huixin, after you return to Yunyao Palace, you must find a way to steal that evidence. If that evidence is sent to the imperial court, we will all die. Do you understand? Lan Huixin's eyes suddenly turned cold. She nodded solemnly and said, "Yes, young master." Go. Murong Lingfeng waved his hand and gestured for her to leave. Lan Huixin bowed and left the secret room. After an hour, Lan Huixin rode on the flying bird and returned to Yunyao Palace. At this time, it was already evening. The sky was dark, and lights were lit everywhere in Yunyao Palace. Lan Huixin went to the kitchen and brought a bowl of spiritual porridge. She pretended to bring the porridge to Yunyao. She took this opportunity to enter Yunyao's room. However, when she entered the room, she found that there was no one in the room. Yunyao was not there. Lan Huixin was full of doubts. She found an excuse and asked a maid about Yunyao's whereabouts. The maid told her that an hour ago, Yunyao seemed to have something urgent and rushed to Tianqing Palace. Lan Huixin was secretly delighted when she heard this news. She quietly sneaked into Yunyao's room and found the secret compartment in the innermost corner of the room. Although the secret compartment had a protective array, this array was not a high-level one. It was very common in many secret rooms and rooms in Yunyao Palace. Lan Huixin had already studied this kind of array. It only took her 100 breaths to crack the array. With a soft click, she finally opened the secret compartment. There was a black fine iron box lying quietly in the secret compartment. It was the one that Yunyao had put in earlier. Lan Huixin's pretty face revealed a smug sneer. She quickly reached out and took out the fine iron box. However, at this moment, the dim room suddenly lit up with bright lights. The door of the room also opened with a creak. 3 figures appeared at the door. Lan Huixin was immediately shocked. She subconsciously turned her head to look at the door and saw that the 3 people were Yunyao, Ji Tianqing, and Long Yunxiao. The 3 of them were staring at her coldly with mocking sneers on their faces. Lan Huixin's face instantly turned pale when she saw this scene. She immediately understood. This was Yunyao's scheme. She had fallen into a trap. Her body instantly turned cold. Her heart felt as if it had fallen into an ice cellar. She froze on the spot, not knowing what to do. Lan Huixin, what else do you want to say now? You walked right into the trap so quickly. I really overestimated you. Chapter 731. Lan Huixin understood everything, but it was too late. She knew very well that since Yunyao had deliberately set her up, she must have suspected her for a long time. Now that she had been caught red-handed, it was useless no matter how she quibbled. When Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Long Yunxiao stepped into the room, she immediately knelt on the ground and put on a pitiful look, crying and begging. Sister Yunyao, it's not what you think. I didn't do it on purpose. Please, I beg you, for the sake of my hard work in serving you. Lan Huixin cried and begged for mercy, but she was secretly looking for a way to escape. She quietly put the fine iron box into her sleeve, trying to hide it in her space ring. Although her little movements couldn't be hidden from Ji Tianqing and the other 2's eyes, they ignored her. However, the 3 of them turned a blind eye and allowed Lan Huixin to quietly hide the iron box in her spatial ring. The next moment, Lan Huixin, who was still kowtowing and begging for mercy, suddenly burst out with all her strength and rushed to the window as fast as the wind. She jumped and burst out with a dazzling true essence brilliance, wanting to break through the window and escape the room. However, Ji Tianqing had already expected her to escape. He waved his hand as fast as lightning and struck out a giant golden palm. Swoosh! The giant golden palm instantly grabbed Lan Huixin and pulled her back to Ji Tianqing. Lan Huixin's expression changed drastically. She was full of anxiety and anger. She urged her true essence to struggle desperately. Ji Tianqing sneered and crushed Lan Huixin's protective true essence with the giant golden palm. Moreover, an incomparably violent true essence gushed out of his palm and rushed into Lan Huixin's body crazily, destroying her essence core and meridians. Lan Huixin immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Her true essence quickly leaked out and lit up with true essence brilliance. In the blink of an eye, Lan Huixin's cultivation was crippled by Ji Tianqing and she became a weak ordinary person. Ji Tianqing casually threw her to the ground, making a muffled plop sound. Lan Huixin lay on the ground with her face full of blood. Her whole body twitched in pain and she let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah! Ji Tianqing! You actually crippled my cultivation. You vicious bastard, I curse you. You'll die a horrible death. Lan Huixin was frightened and desperate. She cursed in pain and anger, her voice sharp and ear-piercing. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao did not pity her at all when they saw her disheveled appearance with blood all over her face. Yunyao stared at her coldly and shouted with an icy expression, Lan Huixin. Back then, you claimed that you were homeless and begged me to stay. I didn't expect you to be so sinister and despicable. You purposely instigated a conflict between me and the heavenly concubine and almost caused Tianqing, me, and the heavenly concubine to lose our lives. What right does a venomous woman like you have to call others venomous? Tianqing only crippled your cultivation and didn't kill you. That's already the greatest mercy he could have shown you. Lan Huixin curled up on the ground and suddenly sneered as if she had lost her mind. She ignored the blood that kept coming out of her mouth and nose. Ha ha ha. I'm homeless. Begging? Don't you know why I begged so humbly and tried so hard to stay? You can all pursue your loved ones. Can't I do the same? Why is it that in order to pursue your loved ones, you are the ones who are deeply moved, but I'm called a vicious woman? Why? I can't accept this. Lan Huixin's hair was disheveled and her face was covered in blood. Her voice was filled with grief, indignation, and excitement. Seeing her like this, Long Yunxiao said expressionlessly in a deep voice, "You're crazy. You don't know what love is at all." When he saw the blood on Lan Huixin's face on the ground, he frowned and said, "Don't let your blood dirty Yao Yao's room." As he spoke, he waved his hand and sent out a beam of light to clean up the blood on the floor. Then, Long Yunxiao carried Lan Huixin out of the room and brought her to a secret room. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao followed into the secret room and the three of them began to interrogate Lan Huixin. Yunyao asked in a cold voice, "Lan Huixin, it's useless for you to explain anything now. Tell us the truth. Who ordered you to do this?" Long Yunxiao said in a dignified voice, "If you confess honestly, I can spare your life. Otherwise, not only will I kill you, but I will also exterminate your whole family." Hearing their words, Lan Huixin was stunned for a moment and then sneered contemptuously. "Ha ha ha. Haven't you already found out who the mastermind is? Why are you interrogating me? Just go and catch him." Long Yunxiao and Yunyao's expressions suddenly froze, and their eyes darkened. Ji Tianqing looked at Lan Huixin indifferently and said calmly, "When I crippled your cultivation just now, I noticed that there was an extremely strong poison hidden in your body. If I'm not wrong, the poison was planted by the mastermind, right? Lan Huixin, if you were forced, you should confess. Only in this way can you reduce your crime and beg the imperial court to be lenient with you." Ji Tianqing's words obviously hit the nail on the head and made Lan Huixin's body tremble. However, she pursed her lips tightly and remained silent, resolutely refusing to confess. She was silently calculating in her heart, whether it's Murong Lingfeng, the son of heaven, Ji Tianqing, or Yunyao, they are all high and mighty princes. They treat human lives like grass. There's no difference. If I don't confess, Ji Tianqing and the rest won't kill me. They even want me to confess to Murong Lingfeng. Murong Lingfeng will also think of a way to save me. He won't let me confess to him. However, if I confess, I will no longer have any value. Not only will Ji Tianqing and the rest kill me, but Murong Lingfeng will also use the heart-devouring poison pill to kill me." Thinking of this, Lan Huixin made up her mind. She would rather die than reveal any information. No matter how Ji Tianqing and the rest interrogated her or even tortured her, she clenched her teeth and refused to reveal anything. In desperation, the three of them could only temporarily give up the interrogation and lock her up in the secret chamber. Of course, Long Yunxiao was full of anger and made a decision in front of Lan Huixin. "Lan Huixin, since you are so stubborn, don't blame me for being ruthless. I will immediately send an order to the Changtian region master to kill your entire Lan family. If you don't want to implicate your family, confess honestly when you have thought it through. As the saying goes, the Son of Heaven keeps his word." Once this order was passed down, it would be impossible to change it. The Lan family would definitely be killed. Long Yunxiao had originally thought that Lan Huixin would definitely be worried and might confess because of this. However, he didn't expect Lan Huixin to have no reaction to this. She was so selfish and cold that she didn't care about the life and death of her family. In this way, Long Yunxiao couldn't do anything for the time being. After Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Long Yunxiao left the secret chamber, they entered the study room together. Chapter 732. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, Ji Tianqing, Long Yunxiao, and Yun Yao had tried several methods, but they still couldn't get Lan Huixin to confess. Lan Huixin had endured several kinds of torture. She was tortured until she was covered in bruises and dirty blood. She looked extremely miserable. However, her will was firm. She wouldn't say anything even if she died. In the end, Ji Tianqing and the other 2 were at their wits' end. Long Yunxiao then thought of a way. He decided to ask Divine Master Qian Yi to perform the soul-searching secret technique to search Lan Huixin's soul and memory to find evidence. However, this method was cruel and vicious. It wasn't an ordinary method. Ordinary people wouldn't use it easily. The soul-searching secret technique also had a high failure rate. Once it failed, not only would they not get any clues, but Lan Huixin would also die. Late at night, Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and Long Yunxiao finally made a decision after weighing the pros and cons in the study room. Early the next morning, Long Yunxiao would look for Divine Master Qian Yi and ask him to perform the soul-searching secret technique. After the meeting, Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao got up and left Yunyao Palace to return to their respective cave residences. Yunyao had been too busy these days. She hadn't rested at all. Finally, she was physically and mentally exhausted. After Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao left, she also went back to her room to rest. Of course, she had already instructed the palace guards to guard the secret room where Lan Huixin was locked up. Although Lan Huixin's cultivation had been destroyed, Yun Yao was still very careful. She arranged for 4 bodyguard commanders to guard outside the secret room at all times to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Yunyao Palace stood quietly on the mountain peak in the middle of the night. It was sleeping in the darkness. The palace was lit up with scattered lights. Not only were there guards guarding the roads and doors, but there were also a few groups of guards patrolling. Suddenly, in the dark night sky outside the palace, a black shadow silently flew over. Swoosh! This figure was as agile as a fallen leaf, as if it had merged with the darkness. It landed lightly in the woods east of Yunyao Palace without alerting anyone. This person was dressed in black and had a veil covering her face. She looked tall and slim, like a young woman. However, his exposed eyes were as deep as the night sky. They were not as gentle and beautiful as a woman's, but contained a cold killing intent. He hid in the forest filled with towering trees and observed quietly for a while before taking out a pair of dark gold scissors that were more than half a meter long. The simple golden scissors exuded a mysterious and powerful aura. Clearly, it was a soul-class magic treasure that surpassed the heavenly yuan level. This item was called the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. According to legend, it was refined from the bones of a golden flood dragon. It possessed an incomparably powerful ability to break spells, as well as a terrifying destructive power. The man in black stared at the walls of Yunyao Palace with burning eyes. After observing for a while, he saw the lines and key points of the defensive formation. He held the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors with both hands, silently urging his majestic true essence, causing the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors to shine with a dazzling golden light. Swish! He held the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and fiercely cut at the defensive formation. Instantly, the defensive formation was broken, and a huge gap was cut out. After that, he put away the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors, and his figure flashed through the gap and entered the defensive formation. His body merged with the darkness as he silently flipped over the walls, passed through the courtyards and palaces, and crept towards the center of Yunyao Palace. The man in black moved stealthily in Yunyao Palace. Obviously, he was familiar with the layout of Yunyao Palace. Moreover, his strength was extremely powerful. He was at least at the 7th level of the Heavenly Yuan stage, so he could easily avoid the detection of all the guards. After about an hour, the man in black entered the depths of the palace and crept into a dark tunnel underground. The tunnel was 100 meters long, and at the end of it was the secret room where Lan Huixin was locked up. The stone door of the secret room was tightly shut, and there were 4 guard commanders guarding outside the door. They were as motionless as stone statues. These 4 guard commanders were all elites with strength at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. They were the strongest powerhouses below the Heavenly Yuan stage. In the entire Yunyao Palace, other than Yunyao, they were the strongest powerhouses. However, the man in black did not take these 4 guard commanders seriously at all. He concealed his aura and crept through the tunnel silently, approaching the 4 guard commanders quietly. When the guard commanders sensed that something was wrong, they turned their heads to look at the man in black. The man in black was less than 10 meters away from them. "Who's that? How dare you trespass into Yunyao Palace? You're seeking death." The 4 guard commanders were instantly awakened. They drew their swords and sabers and were about to attack immediately. However, the man in black waved his hand and shot out a 5-colored spirit light that enveloped half of the tunnel. The 5-colored spirit light immediately formed a formation, blocking the sound and true origin waves in the formation. No matter how the man in black and the guard commanders fought, no matter how loud the noise was, it would not alert the people outside. Swoosh! When the guard commanders brandished their swords and sabers to attack, the man in black hurriedly took out the golden WYRM scissors and urged his vast true origin to fiercely scissor the 2 guards that charged at him. Along with the sound of kacha kacha, the 2 guard swords and bodies were cut into 2 by the golden serpent scissors on the spot. The 2 guards were cut in half at the waist. Their corpses fell to the ground and sprayed out a large amount of blood. Colorful internal organs and intestines flowed out as well. Such a bloody and cruel scene instantly caused the other 2 guard commanders to be stunned, and they were terrified to the point their faces went pale. The 2 of them hadn't recovered from their shock when they saw a golden light flash before their eyes, and then their necks were cut off on the spot by the golden WYRM scissors. The man in black killed the 4 guard commanders swiftly like a bolt of lightning, then hurriedly rushed to the door of the secret room. He didn't waste any time. He held the golden WYRM scissors in his hand and slashed at the secret room's stone door. The secret room's defensive formation and thick and solid stone door were unable to withstand the might of the golden WYRM scissors, and an enormous hole was instantly cut open. The formation collapsed and the stone door shattered. The man in black stepped into the secret room. In the gloomy and cold secret room, Lan Huixin was tied to the wall by a few iron chains. Her hair was disheveled, and her body was covered in blood. She lowered her head dispiritedly and silently gasped for breath. Hearing the sound of the stone door shattering, she was instantly jolted awake. She opened her eyes and looked at the man in black. When she saw the man in black's appearance, her dim and despairing eyes immediately surged with a trace of pleasant surprise and anticipation. "Young Master Murong, you've really come to save me." Lan Huixin's emotions were extremely excited, as if she had seen the hope of escaping with her life. The man in black reached out and took off his mask, revealing a face as beautiful as a beauty's. It was indeed Murong Lingfeng. He held the golden WYRM scissors and cut the iron chains that bound Lan Huixin in a few moves. He asked expressionlessly, "Have you obtained the evidence?" Lan Huixin regained her freedom. She couldn't be bothered to treat her wounds as she hurriedly took out a fine iron box from her space ring. "I've obtained the item, but they still don't seem to be certain that it's you." Before she could finish speaking, the fine iron box in her hand was snatched away by Murong Lingfeng. Chapter 733. Bang! Lan Huixin was sent flying by Murong Lingfeng's palm and crashed into the wall of the secret chamber. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. She fell to the ground and twitched in pain. Murong Lingfeng's palm wasn't very powerful and didn't kill her on the spot. However, this palm had ignited the hundreds of poisons hidden in her body, causing them to erupt and frantically corrode her internal organs, flesh, blood, and bone marrow. The extreme pain caused by the hundreds of poisons immediately made Lan Huixin curl up like a shrimp. She trembled and black poisonous blood kept flowing out of her mouth and nose. However, she widened her eyes in disbelief and glared at Murong Lingfeng with resentment. She stuttered, "Why did you do this to me?" She didn't understand. She had endured all kinds of torture and didn't expose Murong Lingfeng. Why did Murong Lingfeng still want to kill her? Murong Lingfeng put away the fine iron box and looked at her expressionlessly. He said in an indifferent tone, "You know something you shouldn't know. Only death can shut your mouth forever. Moreover, you have no more value. Of course, you should die." After saying that, Murong Lingfeng put on his mask again and turned to leave the secret chamber. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the darkness like a ghost. The secret chamber quieted down and only Lan Huixin was left. She stared at the door of the secret chamber with bloodshot eyes. Her face was as malevolent as a demon and black blood kept flowing out of her mouth and nose. At this moment, her heart was filled with regret, and her entire body was emitting resentment. She hated herself for provoking Murong Lingfeng. This person was simply a demon. She regretted even more that she kept the secret and didn't expose Murong Lingfeng. In the end, she ended up like this. However, no matter how much she regretted, it was useless. The hundreds of poisons had completely erupted and quickly corroded her body. Her flesh and blood had turned into pus. After a short 100 breaths, Lan Huixin's body had completely corroded and turned into a pool of black blood. The #1 genius of the Long Sky region, a peerless beauty whose name spread far and wide, had silently died like this. Not even her bones were left behind. At the same time, Murong Lingfeng had quietly left Yunyao Palace. He flew across the night sky as fast as lightning and quickly returned to Lingfeng Palace. When he returned to his room, he didn't even have time to change out of his black night suit. He couldn't wait to take out the iron box. This young master wants to see what evidence those 3 bitches have found to actually link it to this young master. Murong Lingfeng coldly snorted, filled with anger. He used the golden flood dragon scissors to break the formation and lock of the fine iron box. When he opened the box, he saw that it was empty except for a small piece of paper. He picked up the piece of paper and saw a line of bold and powerful words written on it. Murong Lingfeng, wash your neck and wait for death. Seeing this, Murong Lingfeng was so angry that his face turned ashen. He grabbed the fine iron box and threw it to the ground. Bastard! Too arrogant. This little bastard Ji Tianqing, this young master will definitely tear him to shreds. Previously, he had thought that Ji Tianqing and the others might have really found some evidence. In the end, this was just a trap set up by Ji Tianqing and the other 2. Murong Lingfeng had been too cautious and had revealed a flaw, which had even cost Lan Huixin's life. In the end, the so-called evidence was just a piece of paper, and it was a blatant provocation to him. Murong Lingfeng had always been arrogant and conceited. How could he endure such humiliation? He was so angry that his hands were trembling, and his eyes were filled with a dark red murderous aura. He couldn't wait to kill his way into Tianqing Palace and tear Ji Tianqing to shreds. However, he could only think about it. In the wee hours of the morning, the night was dark. Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room, consolidating his martial arts realm. Suddenly, a guard rushed to the door and reported to him. "Master, Yunyao Palace just sent news. Something happened tonight. Miss Yunyao wants you to go over immediately." Ji Tianqing was instantly awakened. He frowned with a serious expression. Something happened at Yunyao Palace? Could it be Lan Huixin? He realized that something was wrong and immediately rushed out of Tianqing Palace. He rushed to Yunyao Palace as fast as a flash of light. Not long after, he arrived at Yunyao Palace and hurried to the depths of the palace. When he entered the dark underground passage, he saw that the ground at the end of the passage was covered in blood and internal organs. There were also a few horrifying corpses. Yunyao and Long Yunxiao were standing at the door of the secret chamber, looking around with gloomy expressions. Ji Tianqing hurried over and asked in a heavy tone, "What happened?" Yunyao answered with anger in her eyes, 2 hours ago, someone snuck into the palace and killed 4 of the guard commanders. They also killed Lan Huixin." "What? Someone actually snuck into Yunyao Palace?" Ji Tianqing frowned fiercely. His heart was surging with anger. Especially when he saw the corpses of the 4 guard commanders, he was even more furious. Long Yunxiao's face was also very gloomy. He said in a low voice, "The corpses of the 4 guard commanders are very horrible." Lan Huixin died even more miserably. As he said that, he pointed to the inside of the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing stepped into the secret chamber and saw that the iron chain on the wall had been broken. Lan Huixin's body was not in the secret chamber. However, there was a puddle of black blood on the ground that was about to solidify into black ashes. He looked at it and realized that it was the filthy blood left behind after Lan Huixin's corpse had decayed. It was highly toxic. Damn it! Murong Lingfeng actually used such a cruel method to kill Lan Huixin. What's the difference between him and the devil? Yunyao also nodded and said in a heavy tone, "That's right. Lan Huixin was despicable and sinister. She deserved to die." However, Lan Huixin refused to confess. "Murong Lingfeng still snuck into my palace and cruelly poisoned Lan Huixin to death. Murong Lingfeng's method is so vicious and ruthless. It makes one's hair stand on end." Long Yunxiao frowned, shook his head and sighed, "It's a pity that Lan Huixin is dead. This clue is also broken. It's very difficult for us to find any evidence to prove that Murong Lingfeng is the mastermind behind this." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and asked Long Yunxiao, "Son of Heaven, have you investigated the Yan Hui Mountain? Murong Lingfeng and the demon king Xue Qianjiang fought there. Perhaps they left some clues." Long Yunxiao shook his head again and said in a low voice, "I've already thought of this. A few days ago, I sent people to investigate carefully. Unfortunately, Murong Lingfeng was too cautious and meticulous. He didn't leave any evidence at all." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were silent. The matter had reached a deadlock. They couldn't continue investigating. Although the 3 of them knew that the mastermind behind this was Murong Lingfeng, they had no evidence and couldn't convict Murong Lingfeng. After a moment, the 3 of them left the underground secret chamber and returned to the study. Long Yunxiao chatted with the 2 of them for a while and then left. Yunyao pulled Ji Tianqing and said in a gentle tone, "Tianqing, we can only put this matter of Murong Lingfeng aside for now. We have to be more careful in the future." Chapter 734. Originally, Ji Tianqing had just broken through to the 6th level of the Sky Origin stage and wanted to cultivate in seclusion for a few more days to consolidate his cultivation. However, since Yunyao had brought this up, he naturally couldn't refuse. Moreover, Yunyao had said a long time ago that her parents had invited Ji Tianqing to stay at Cloud Soul Palace for a few days. He couldn't refuse such a great offer, so of course he nodded and said, "All right, then I'll go back and make some preparations. We'll depart tomorrow morning." Yunyao chatted with him for a while and gave him a few more instructions before letting him leave Yunyao Palace. After Ji Tianqing returned to Tianqing Palace, he made the necessary arrangements. He found the steward and the commander of the guards and gave them instructions. After all, he would be delayed for at least half a month on this trip to Cloud Soul Palace. After he finished his preparations, 4 hours had passed. The sun rose, and a new day had arrived. Ji Tianqing brought the little black dragon and Qian Yu to Yunyao Palace. After he met up with Yunyao, they rode on the spirit crane and left the monarch palace together, heading for Cloud Soul Palace. During the journey, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood side by side on the spirit crane's back, intimately leaning against each other. The two of them were alone, flying between the blue sky and white clouds. Only then did their hearts truly calm down. Too many things have happened in the past half a month. Ji Tianqing wrapped his arm around Yun Yao's waist and held her in his arms. He said gently, "Yao Yao, you've suffered a lot during this period of time. You've been through many life and death situations, and you haven't had a good rest." Yun Yao gently shook her head and said sincerely, "I didn't suffer much, and it wasn't that dangerous. However, Tianqing, you took the blood dissipation curse for me and almost lost your life. You were the one who was truly in danger. I've already sent a message back to Cloud Soul Palace and told my parents about this. My mother is very worried about you. My father said that when you go to Cloud Soul Palace, he must thank you personally." Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile and whispered into Yun Yao's ear, "We'll be a family soon. Why are you still so polite?" Yun Yao's expression did not change, but her crystal-clear earlobes were covered with a layer of red. It was obvious that she was embarrassed. On the evening of the third day, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao finally arrived at Cloud Soul Palace. Thousands of feet high in the sky, the boundless sea of clouds was illuminated by the setting sun. The Cloud Spirit Palace stood in the middle of the sea of clouds. It was majestic and dignified. Under the setting sun, it emitted thousands of rays of light. This was Ji Tianqing's third visit to Cloud Soul Palace. However, every time he saw the magnificent Cloud Spirit Palace, he would be shocked by its majestic aura. Not long after, the spirit crane landed on the square outside of Cloud Spirit Palace. The floor was paved with golden bricks. It reflected the sunlight as usual, and the golden light was dazzling. When the two of them landed on the square, the dozen or so disciples of the Yun family who were practicing their swordsmanship on the square immediately stopped and bowed respectfully to the two of them. "Greetings, Miss." "Greetings, Lord Ji." The last time Ji Tianqing came to Cloud Soul Palace, he was the genius of the Thearka's son, the #1 genius of the human race, and the Tianqian territory lord. He was honorable and dazzling. The disciples of the Yun family basically remembered his name and appearance. They were very respectful and worshipped him. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly to the disciples. He walked side by side with Yun Yao across the square and toward the palace gate. The dozen or so young disciples all stared at the two of them as they walked up the stairs. Until the two of them stepped onto the green jade steps and entered Cloud Soul Palace, the disciples were still discussing. Their eyes were filled with admiration and yearning. After Yun Yao led Ji Tianqing into Cloud Soul Palace, she arranged a small courtyard for him so that he could rest temporarily. When night fell, Yun Yao changed into an elegant and luxurious dress. Then, she went to find Ji Tianqing to attend the banquet together. Tonight's banquet was a simple family banquet. Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu had specially set up a banquet in the side hall to welcome Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Ji Tianqing was still wearing a white robe. Although his attire was simple, he exuded confidence and vigor. It was admirable. When the two of them entered the side hall, Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu, who were sitting on the main seats, immediately looked toward the entrance. Yun Yao was wearing an icy blue dress. She was like a fairy who had walked out of a world of ice and snow. She was cold and beautiful, and her aura was noble and holy. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing was handsome. He was wearing a white robe, which made him look even more handsome and elegant. He and Yun Yao walked hand in hand, and they really complemented each other. A talented man and a beautiful woman, a perfect match made in heaven. At that moment, not only did Yun Zhongqi reveal a gratified smile, but he even had the illusion that he was witnessing his daughter's wedding with Ji Tianqing. Even Bailey Ningsu, who had a neutral attitude before, was stunned by Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing's elegance. She suddenly felt that only when Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were together, they had a natural sense of intimacy and perfection. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao walked to the middle of the hall and greeted Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu. Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu quickly smiled and nodded, indicating that the two of them should stop being so courteous. In addition to the four of them, there was another person in the hall. It was Yun Yao's cousin, Zhu Fifan. Zhu Fifan's parents died when he was young. He had been living with his aunt, Bailey Ningsu, in the Cloud Spirit Palace for more than 20 years. Bailey Ningsu treated him like her own son. She took care of him as if he was her own son. When Ji Tianqing came to the Cloud Spirit Palace last time, Zhu Fifan happened to be out on some business, so he didn't meet him. This was the first time they met. Bailey Ningsu introduced them to each other. Ji Tianqing and Zhu Fifan cupped their hands and greeted him. It could be said that they got to know each other. Zhu Fifan was dressed luxuriously. He had a kind face and was as gentle as jade. He was a gentleman with an elegant demeanor. His speech and actions were quite well-mannered. When he talked to Ji Tianqing, he also smiled. He was like a spring breeze and left a good impression on Ji Tianqing. After the two of them chatted for a while, Yun Zhongqi asked everyone to sit down. After a while, the family banquet began. The maids came in one after another. They brought all kinds of delicious dishes and several kinds of wine. Although there were only a dozen dishes in the banquet, all of them were the best in the world. While everyone was enjoying the delicious food and wine, they chatted from time to time. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Ji Tianqing could also feel that Yun Zhongqi was treating him with more and more importance. Even Bailey Ningsu's impression of him improved greatly. She seemed to be more amiable and close to him. After an hour, the banquet ended. Everyone was about to leave after eating and drinking. Bailey Ningsu left first with Yun Yao. The mother and daughter wanted to have a chat. Yun Zhongqi looked at Ji Tianqing and said with a kind face, "Tianqing, do you mind taking a walk with me?" Ji Tianqing knew that Yun Zhongqi must have something to say to him. So, he smiled and nodded. "How can I, Tianqing, refuse your invitation?" Chapter 735. Yun Zhongqi led Ji Tianqing out of the side hall and ascended to the second floor of the palace. The last time Ji Tianqing had come to Cloud Soul Palace, Yun Zhongqi had taken him to the Nebula Pagoda. The two of them had a secret discussion in the pagoda and decided on a plan to work together. What they discussed was confidential. Tonight, Yun Zhongqi had taken him to the second floor of the palace and stood in the hallway to admire the night scenery. From this, Ji Tianqing immediately guessed that what Yun Zhongqi was going to talk about wasn't anything confidential. The second floor of the palace was completely silent. The hallway was empty, and there was no one else besides the two of them. Yun Zhongqi stood in the hallway with his hands behind his back and calmly looked at the sea of clouds in front of him. Ji Tianqing stood beside him and looked at the sea of clouds in front of him, admiring the beautiful starry sky. The two of them were silent for a while before Yun Zhongqi finally opened his mouth and said in a serious tone, "Tianqing, I already know that you took the blood dissipation curse on Yao Yao's behalf." The blood dissipation curse was extremely vicious. Even if I did it myself, I wouldn't have been able to dispel it. For this matter, Uncle wants to thank you properly. Thank you for saving Yao Yao's life. Ji Tianqing shook his head and smiled. Since Yao Yao and I love each other, this isn't just a verbal promise. I will hold her hand until we grow old and use all my strength to protect her. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Yun Zhongqi turned his head to look at him and said in a gratified tone, "If anyone else had said this, I definitely wouldn't have believed them. However, Tianqing, you've already done this, so how can I not believe you? Yao Yao is indeed a good judge of character. She didn't misjudge you. You are indeed worthy of being entrusted to her for the rest of her life. For a girl, to To have someone protect her wholeheartedly and share life and death with her is the greatest blessing. In the future, I can entrust Yao Yao to you, so I can be completely at ease. Last time, when Yun Zhongqi had spoken to Ji Tianqing, he had always referred to himself as this lord. Tonight, he had changed his title to uncle. Ji Tianqing knew that this meant that Yun Zhongqi's attitude towards him had improved. Furthermore, Yun Zhongqi's words made it clear that he was treating him like a son-in-law. Ji Tianqing was gratified, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded to show that he understood. Yun Zhongqi continued, "It has been almost a month since the Duanmu clan's herb garden was destroyed. During this month, the central continent was in a state of turmoil. Heroes were vying for supremacy, and the situation was chaotic. Before this, who would have thought that the person who caused such a change in the world would be a newborn calf like you?" Yun Zhongqi's tone was somewhat rueful. A faint, playful smile hung on his resolute and dignified face. In fact, this was exactly what he was thinking. A month ago, he also couldn't believe that Ji Tianqing could do such a feat and cause such a huge commotion. But Ji Tianqing really did it. When Yun Zhongqi first saw Ji Tianqing today, he knew that Ji Tianqing's cultivation had improved again. Within a month, he had improved from the 5th level of the Sky Origin stage to the 6th level. That was godly speed. Yun Zhongqi was very surprised. He was even more satisfied with Ji Tianqing now. He knew that even the Emperor of the Imperial Palace couldn't have such a great talent. What more could he ask for when he had such a perfect son-in-law? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with a playful smile, "Uncle, how is the Duanmu clan doing?" A smug smile appeared on Yun Zhongqi's face as he uttered these words. "They are struggling at death's door. They are dying." Ji Tianqing immediately understood what he meant. He nodded and said, "That's great. In 10 days, Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet will be held. All the influential forces in the central continent will gather in the Cloud Spirit Palace. Uncle, you will be able to call for help. When that time comes, the Cloud Spirit Palace will not only destroy the Duanmu clan completely, but they will also be able to expand their power." Yun Zhongqi nodded and exchanged a glance with him. Both of them had a tacit understanding of each other. After that, Yun Zhongqi's smile disappeared. He said earnestly, "Tianqing, after what happened last time, the Duanmu Huang knows about your relationship with the Cloud Spirit Palace. From now on, you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to worry about the Duanmu clan's opinion. Also, the Duanmu Huang suffered a loss once. They won't do anything to you in the near future. Now, what I am most worried about is the Murong clan and the Demon clan. You must be careful." Ji Tianqing nodded and said seriously, "The Duanmu clan is about to be destroyed. As their ally, the Murong clan will definitely help. However, I don't know why, but the Murong clan seems to be impatient. They want to kill me. I can see this from Murong Lingfeng's recent reaction. He is no longer pretending like before." Yun Zhongqi nodded and said calmly, "Yao Yao has already told me about Murong Lingfeng kidnapping the heavenly consort. In my impression, Murong Lingfeng has always been a shrewd person. I didn't think that he would be so daring as to kidnap the heavenly consort. He really doesn't know what death is. If I'm not wrong, he must have received someone's orders. That's why he acted so impatiently." When he heard this, Ji Tianqing frowned and asked curiously, "Whose orders did Murong Lingfeng receive?" Yun Zhongqi showed a playful expression and said in a low voice, "Naturally, it's the people behind the two clans. They are the real masterminds." A glint flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes as he subconsciously said, "I'm afraid that only a certain important figure in the imperial court can make the Duanmu clan and Murong clan form an alliance and command the two clans, right?" Yun Zhongqi shook his head and said in a low voice, "It can be big or small." Ji Tianqing immediately understood what he meant. Yun Zhongqi continued, "Recently, the situation in the central state has been chaotic. Not only are various forces fighting in the dark, but the remnants of the demon clan are also restless. Although you have outstanding talent and outstanding strength, you are not afraid of the Demon King's attacks. However, the demon clan is cruel and bloodthirsty. They have all kinds of despicable and vicious methods that are hard to defend against. The blood-dissipating curse is an example. Tianqing, I don't want to see you and Yao Yao get schemed against by the demon clan and be in mortal danger. Even if you can resolve 1 or 2 crises, you can't be so lucky every time. Ji Tianqing understood Yun Zhongqi's feelings. He nodded seriously and said, "Don't worry, uncle. I will be more careful in the future." Yun Zhongqi nodded and continued, "There's one more thing that I want to remind you of. This time, Miracle Dr. Bailey has returned from the southern wasteland swamp. He is about to celebrate his 300th birthday. The old man told me that he had been traveling the continent for the first half of his life. He had almost traveled the entire Tianxian continent. Now that he has returned, he wants to settle down and stop traveling the world. However, he has never taken in a disciple. He has never passed down the medical knowledge that he had spent his entire life researching. Therefore, the old man wants to use this birthday celebration as an opportunity to pick a talented disciple to pass down his legacy. As the saying goes, keep the goodies within the family. Tianqing, you are the #1 genius of our clan. You have excellent character and talent. Of course, you are the best choice." Chapter 736. Ji Tianqing had thought that the reason he was staying in Cloud Soul Palace was to get closer to the Yun family. As for Divine Dr. Bailey's 300th birthday, he was only here to perform the etiquette of a junior. He had never thought that Miracle Dr. Bailey would take this opportunity to take him in as a disciple and pass on his skills to him. Moreover, Yun Zhongqi's words implied that he wanted Chen Xiaobei to seize the opportunity to become Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple. Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment, then cupped his fists at Yun Zhongqi and said, "Thank you for helping me fight for this opportunity, uncle. Miracle Dr. Bailey is famous all over the world. It would be my honor to become his disciple. I will do my best to fight for it. However, it depends on fate. I need Miracle Dr. Bailey's approval. I can't force it." Yun Zhongqi could immediately tell that Ji Tianqing was rather indifferent towards this matter. He wasn't excited or expectant at all. He could fight for it or not. Therefore, he advised him again. "Tianqing, Miracle Dr. Bailey is not only one of the top 3 miracle doctors in the continent, but he is also a soul-tempering stage powerhouse. If you can become his disciple, you will have a higher status and reputation. It will also bring unimaginable benefits to you, Yao Yao, and Cloud Soul Palace. Anyway, I hope you can seize the opportunity." Yun Zhongqi was the head of the Yun family and a soul-tempering stage powerhouse. His status was extraordinary. The fact that he could persuade Ji Tianqing so sincerely showed that he really valued Ji Tianqing. He had high hopes for him. Moreover, Ji Tianqing had a feeling that there was more to it than met the eye. It was just that Yun Zhongqi did not want to say it out loud. Therefore, Chen Xiaobei did not decline and nodded in agreement. After the two of them finished talking about business, they chatted for a while and then left together. Not long after the two of them left, light footsteps could be heard coming from a room at the end of the corridor. A handsome young man in a long brocade robe and holding a purple jade fan opened the door and walked out. This man was Yun Yao's cousin, the gentle and elegant gentleman, the poison doctor Zhu Fifan. However, at this moment, his expression was somewhat unsightly. His face was ice-cold, and his eyes surged with traces of hatred and coldness. He gripped the fan with both hands so tightly that his knuckles turned white. It was obvious that he was furious. "I guessed it long ago." Uncle and aunt invited Ji Tianqing to stay in Cloud Spirit Palace for a while. "It's definitely not that simple. Who would have thought that when grandfather wanted to pass on his legacy, instead of choosing from his descendants, he would use the birthday banquet as an opportunity to choose a disciple. What's worse is that Ji Tianqing hasn't married my cousin yet, but my uncle already treats him as his son-in-law and wants him to inherit my grandfather's legacy. Apparently, Zhu Fifan had already guessed that Yun Zhongqi was going to discuss something important with Ji Tianqing, so he hid in the room and eavesdropped on their conversation. He didn't care about the Murong family, the Duanmu family, or the Demon clan. However, when it came to the legacy of his grandfather, Miracle Dr. Bailey, he was extremely concerned and even angry. After all, he had inherited the wishes of his deceased mother. He had been studying medicine and alchemy since he was young, and his lifelong goal was to become a miracle doctor. In the past 20 years in Cloud Spirit Palace, he had been following Bailey Ningsu and learning medicine with all his might. He was thirsty for knowledge. The thing that he coveted the most, the thing that he wanted even in his dreams, was divine Dr. Bailey's inheritance. Now, Ji Tianqing had suddenly appeared. With the support and encouragement of his uncle, Yun Zhongqi, he was going to snatch away the treasure that he coveted the most. How could he tolerate this? Ji Tianqing is just an outsider. He hasn't even entered Cloud Spirit Palace yet, but he wants to snatch my grandfather's legacy. I will never allow that. However, I have to find out what Aunt Yun wants to do first. Thinking of this, Zhu Fifan waved the fan in his hand and went downstairs. After he left the main hall, he went to Bailey Ningsu's residence calmly. 15 minutes later, Zhu Fifan entered Thousand Cloud Palace. When he saw Bailey Ningsu had just sent Yun Yao away. Zhu Fifan reported outside the door. After getting Bailey Ningsu's permission, he pushed the door open and entered. Fifan greets Aunt Yun. Zhu Fifan walked into the room, came to the round wooden table, and bowed to Bailey Ningsu. Bailey Ningsu sat at the table in a dignified manner. Her slender hand was holding a white jade teacup, and she was slowly sipping tea. She put down the teacup and looked at Zhu Fifan with a gentle smile on her face. She asked, "Fifan, it's already so late. Why are you looking for Aunt Yun?" Zhu Fifan looked hesitant, as if he wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Bailey Ningsu raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Fifan, do you have something to tell Aunt Yun? You were brought up by Aunt Yun. What is there that you can't tell Aunt Yun? Just say it. Aunt Yun won't blame you." Hearing this, Zhu Fifan's heart calmed down. He lowered his voice and said, "Aunt Yun, after the banquet, I went for a walk outside the palace and accidentally heard the conversation between Ji Tianqing and Uncle. I heard them talking about Grandpa accepting a disciple and inheriting his legacy. I don't know where Ji Tianqing got the news, but he actually pestered Uncle and asked him to plead with Grandpa for him. He actually wants to become Grandpa's last disciple and study Grandpa's unique medical skills." Zhu Fifan's tone was a bit resentful. Obviously, he was very dissatisfied with this. After hearing this, Bailey Ningsu immediately frowned and said in a deep voice, "Fifan, you actually eavesdropped on the conversation between Ji Tianqing and your uncle? How can you be so unruly?" Zhu Fifan hurriedly explained, "Aunt Yun, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. They were standing on the eaves of the corridor and I accidentally heard it. Aunt Yun, Grandpa is the top divine doctor in the continent. What kind of miraculous skills have he learned in his life? Even if Grandpa wants to inherit his legacy, he should pass it on to you or Yao Yao. How can he choose an outsider to be his disciple? Moreover, Ji Tianqing is a commoner from a small country in the south. How can he deliberately get close to cousin Yao Yao and even want to enter Cloud Soul Palace? Aunt Yun, I think that Ji Tianqing is not a good person. He must have other motives for getting close to cousin Yao Yao. However, cousin Yao Yao is kind and pure. She didn't even know that she was deceived by that kid. This kid is too hateful. He even wants to get his hands on Grandpa's legacy. In order to achieve his goal, Zhu Fifan did not hesitate to distort the truth and slander Ji Tianqing. But before he could finish, Bailey Ningsu waved her hand and interrupted him. "Shut up." Zhu Fifan immediately shut up and looked at Bailey Ningsu with an unwilling face. Bailey Ningsu looked at him and said in a somewhat reproachful tone, "Fifan, are you blaming your grandpa for being unreasonable?" Fifan wouldn't dare. Zhu Fifan hurriedly lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Bailey Ningsu calmly said, "Fifan, although Ji Tianqing's status is not enough to become the son-in-law of Cloud Soul Palace, he has a bright future and a good character. Yao Yao's eyes are like torches. How can the person she wants to entrust her life to be a mediocre person? You don't know Ji Tianqing well. Don't criticize him in the future. Don't make Yao Yao unhappy. As for your grandpa's legacy, he has his own plans. It's not up to us to criticize him." But Zhu Fifan was unwilling and wanted to say something more. Bailey Ningsu waved her hand and said in a dignified tone, "No need to say anything more. I know what I'm doing. You can leave." Zhu Fifan immediately shut up and did not say anything else. He pursed his lips unwillingly and suppressed the anger in his heart. "Aunt Yun, rest early. Fifan will leave now." He bowed to Bailey Ningsu and hurriedly left the room, turning to leave. However, when he walked out of the Thousand Cloud Palace, his face turned cold. He murmured, "In the past, Aunt Yun did not look Ji Tianqing in the eye, but now she's speaking up for him." Chapter 737. For the next 2 days, Ji Tianqing rested peacefully in Cloud Soul Palace. During this period, Yunyao took him around Cloud Soul Palace a few times, so he had a better understanding of the layout of Cloud Soul Palace. Furthermore, many of the younger generation of the Yun family had come to visit Ji Tianqing. They were extremely polite and respectful to him. After 2 days, the Yun family became more familiar with him and had a good impression of him. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Everyone in the Yun family seemed to have accepted Ji Tianqing and nothing unpleasant happened. On the morning of the 3rd day, Cloud Soul Palace was shrouded in mist and the sun was about to rise. After Yunyao had breakfast, she prepared to go to Ji Tianqing's residence. As soon as she walked out of the palace, she met Zhu Fifan, who was taking a stroll on the road outside the palace. When Zhu Fifan saw Yunyao, he stopped and greeted her with a smile. "Cousin Yao Yao, good morning." Yunyao nodded and said calmly, "Good morning, cousin." She greeted Zhu Fifan and was about to walk past him to find Ji Tianqing. However, Zhu Fifan had no intention of leaving. He walked side by side with her and started to chat. "Yao Yao, young Master Ji has been in Cloud Soul Palace for 2 days. He is a guest from afar. You should accompany him." Yunyao nodded again and said calmly, "Yes, I know." She was as cold as usual. Her words were short and her tone and expression were very calm. Zhu Fifan knew her well and did not feel awkward. He continued, "I heard that young Master Ji almost lost his life to save you. Although he escaped from danger, it was inevitable that his vitality would be greatly damaged. Since he has come to Cloud Soul Palace, we should treat him well. At least we should do our best to help him recover as soon as possible. Yao Yao, do you still remember that there is a spirit spring in the back mountain of Cloud Soul Palace? The effect of the spirit spring is extraordinary. If you cultivate in the spring, it can cleanse your body and heal your soul. It is very beneficial to martial artists. Yao Yao, you can bring young Master Ji to the spirit spring to recuperate. I'm sure he'll be able to recover quickly." Upon hearing Zhu Fifan's words, Yunyao stared blankly for a moment. Then, an expectant look appeared on her face as she nodded and said, I remember now. There is indeed a spiritual spring in the back mountain. When I was young, I went to the spirit spring once. Soaking in the spirit spring, I quickly recovered from my injuries. Yunyao cupped her hands and bowed to Zhu Fifan. Thank you for your reminder, cousin. I'll take Tianqing to the spiritual spring now. Zhu Fifan nodded with a smile and quickly said, Yao Yao, you haven't come back for many years, so you probably don't remember the location of the spiritual spring, right? Over the years, many caves and gardens have been opened up in the back mountain. I'm afraid you won't be able to find the place if you go alone. Let me take you there. After saying that, Zhu Fifan was about to take Yunyao to the spiritual spring at the back of the mountain. Yunyao naturally didn't refuse. She nodded and agreed. After all, when she took Ji Tianqing back to Cloud Spirit Palace for the first time, it was Zhu Fifan who advised her to use the Nirvana crystal to save Ji Tianqing's life. After that incident, she not only trusted Zhu Fifan, but also felt grateful to him. Now, Zhu Fifan took the initiative to give her an idea to heal Ji Tianqing's injuries. Of course, she wouldn't think too much about it. Thank you, cousin. Yunyao bowed and thanked Zhu Fifan. Then, she ordered the maid behind Zhu Fifan, Jiao, go to Hefeng Garden now and report to young Master Ji. Take him to the spiritual spring in the back mountain. Jiao was Zhu Fifan's personal maid. She had a pretty face and a slim figure. She had the demure temperament of a pretty girl from a humble family. She grew up in Cloud Spirit Palace since she was a child. She was very well behaved and clever, and she was very loyal to the Yun family. When she heard Yunyao's order, she quickly bowed and said respectfully, Yes, young mistress. Then, Zhu Fifan took Yunyao to the back of the mountain. Jiao, the maid, rushed to Hefeng Garden to inform Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was meditating in his room. He was consolidating his martial arts foundation and cultivating his skills. Early in the morning in Cloud Spirit Palace, it was the time of the day when the spiritual energy was the densest. It was very helpful for cultivation. However, at this moment, a clear and pleasant female voice sounded in the courtyard outside the door. Young Master Ji, maid Jiao wants to see you. This voice broke the tranquility of Hefeng Garden, causing Ji Tianqing to stop circulating and open his eyes. Come in, he replied calmly. Then, the door was pushed open. A slender maid in a long brocade dress walked into the room with light steps. She was maid Jiao. She walked into the room and bowed to Ji Tianqing. Then, she said respectfully, Young Master Ji, young mistress asked me to send a message to inform you. Young mistress is waiting for you at the spirit spring in the back of the mountain. She asked me to take you there now. Hearing Jiao's words, Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. A touch of doubt flashed in his eyes. Yao Yao asked me to go to the spirit spring in the back of the mountain to find her. Do you know why young mistress is looking for me? Jiao showed an obedient and pure smile. Then, she said in a clear voice, although I don't know the specific reason, I can see that young mistress is thinking of you. Well, then take me there. Ji Tianqing nodded in response. Then, he got up and walked out of the room. Then, Jiao followed him out of Hefeng Garden and led him to the back of the mountain. The area of Cloud Soul Palace was too large. The terrain was too broad. From Hefeng Garden to the back of the mountain, they had to pass through half of Cloud Soul Palace. It was at least a few dozen miles away. After an hour, Ji Tianqing and Jiao entered the back of the mountain. They walked on a bluestone road in the forest. The bluestone road was 2 meters wide. Lush trees grew on the side of the road. There were also all kinds of spiritual flowers and plants. When Jiao brought Ji Tianqing to a black stone tablet that was 10 meters tall, she stopped in front of it. Young Master Ji, this is as far as I can take you. Ahead is a forbidden area. As servants, we can't go in. Jiao bowed to Ji Tianqing and explained apologetically, continue forward. When you reach the end of the bluestone road, turn right and you'll find the spirit spring. Hearing Jiao's words, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at the black stone tablet on the side of the road. He saw that the stone tablet was indeed engraved with the words, "Back of the Mountain Forbidden Area. No trespassers." Ji Tianqing knew that the rules of the aristocratic families were strict and could not be violated. He waved his hand and motioned for Audiobook to leave. After Audiobook turned and left, he stepped on the bluestone road and continued to walk forward. After more than 1,000 steps, the bluestone road came to an end. It divided into two roads, one left and one right. Both roads were paved with black stone slabs. The roads were winding and there was a lush forest beside them. Ji Tianqing looked around and stepped on the black stone path on the right. He walked into the depths of the forest. When his figure disappeared at the end of the path, a handsome young man came out from behind a tall stone statue at the fork. This man was Xiaofan. He held a purple jade folding fan in his hand and looked at the black stone path on the right. A cold smile flashed in his eyes. Chapter 738. Xiaofan stood at the crossroads and looked at the black stone path on the right with a cold smile. Apparently, the black stone path on the right was not the way to the spiritual spring. Xiaofan gently waved the purple jade folding fan, revealing a confident look. The magic dust formation is the top Tianyuan formation. Although it is not powerful in killing, it is a powerful trap formation. Even a cultivator at the 7th or 8th level of the Sky Origin stage will be trapped in the magic dust formation for 1 or 2 months, or even half a year. Xiaofan was so sure because something like this had happened before. A few years ago, a cultivator at the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage accidentally broke into the magic dust formation and was trapped for 1 month before he was rescued. Thinking of this, Xiaofan smiled coldly and murmured, "Humph. Ji Tianqing won't die, but he will be trapped in the formation for more than half a month. By then, Grandpa's birthday banquet will be over and the final disciple will be chosen. He will have nothing to do with it. Grandpa's medical skills are mine. I won't allow anyone to touch it." Ji Tianqing walked along the black stone path and soon entered the deep mountain. The trees on both sides of the path were getting thicker and thicker. There were several black stone tablets on both sides of the path. Every stone tablet was modeled with ancient symbols and lines, which gave out a mysterious and simple atmosphere. Ji Tianqing could feel that the spiritual qi was getting thicker and thicker as he walked to the end of the path. There were wisps of spiritual fog in the air. He instinctively thought that it had something to do with the spiritual spring. However, when he stepped on an inconspicuous black stone slab, there was a cracking sound under his feet. That clear and crisp sound was like the sound of a mirror being stepped on. Ji Tianqing immediately stopped and lowered his head to look at his feet with a puzzled expression. The square black stone slab under his feet was still intact. There was not even a crack on it. Where did the cracking sound come from? Ji Tianqing frowned. He felt that something was wrong. When he raised his head and looked around, he found that the scenery around him had changed. In just a short moment, the dense woods and towering trees had all disappeared. Ji Tianqing's surroundings turned into a boundless desert. The flat and desolate land was covered with fist-sized sharp gravel and dark brown soil. As far as the eye could see, the earth was pitch black, and there was not a trace of green in sight. It was filled with a desolate aura. Large dark clouds were surging in the sky. The light was dim, which made people feel depressed. A gust of wind whistled through the air, bringing with it a cold air that was as sharp as a sword. It was unbearable. Ji Tianqing stood on the cold and desolate Gobi Desert. He looked around and frowned with a cold expression. "It's a formation? Even I didn't notice any abnormalities and fell into the formation silently. Looks like this formation isn't simple at all." Although this was a sudden turn of events, he was not surprised or flustered. He remained calm and collected. His heart was like a mirror. He immediately guessed that the maid named 9 must have pointed him in the wrong direction. The black stone path should not lead to the spirit spring. It should lead to some secret forbidden area. That was why a powerful formation was set up. Ji Tianqing only needed a little analysis to guess the reason. There's something wrong with that maid. She dared to scheme against me. It seems that Cloud Spirit Palace is not peaceful. However, let's not talk about this first. I'll think of a way to break the formation first. He quickly calmed down and put the matter of the maid 9 aside. He began to focus on studying the formation. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and flew into the sky above the desert. He stood in the sky with endless dark clouds above his head. His eyes were sharp as he observed the situation below. Looking down at the desert from the sky, his field of vision was wider. He could see everything within a 20-mile radius. This area was completely barren. The terrain was flat and low. There was nothing on the ground other than black soil and gravel. Just from this alone, there was no clue to be found. Ji Tianqing identified a direction and flew over as fast as lightning. Very quickly, 4 hours passed. He flew as fast as he could for more than 2,000 miles without stopping. However, the ground was still the desolate desert. There was no difference or change in the scenery. This desert seemed to be endless. There was no end to it. At this point, Ji Tianqing had basically figured out the situation. This formation is indeed extraordinary. It's actually a small world in the formation. It's very real. There's only the desert in the formation. There are no living creatures or beasts. There's also no danger. It seems that it's not a killing formation, but a trapping formation. If I can't find a way to break the formation, I'll be trapped in this desert world and never be able to get out. Ji Tianqing's mood was very calm. He calmly analyzed the situation and activated his Dharma Eye. Pure Heart Dharma Eye. He used the Pure Heart Demon subduing art and activated the power of the art. His eyes turned golden and contained mysterious Dharma power. The Pure Heart Demon subduing art was a cultivation technique that specialized in restraining the devil race. It was very lethal to the devil race. However, the Pure Heart Demon subduing art had many wonderful uses and contained many consummate skills. The Pure Heart Dharma Eye was one of the consummate skills. It could see through falsehoods and disguises, and see the essence of things. Ji Tianqing was a Formation Dao Grandmaster. Of course, he understood that although the world formed by the formation was real, it was also a disguise. The essence of the formation was actually the power of heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing looked around with a sharp gaze. The scene he saw with his Dharma Eye immediately changed. His golden eyes saw through the disguise of the desert world and clearly saw the network and structure of the formation. So it's a supreme-grade heaven essence formation. Its main attribute is earth. It uses 6 different heaven essence formations to set it up. With Ji Tianqing's attainments in the formation Dao, he could break almost 90% of the heaven essence formations. However, supreme-grade heaven essence formations were very rare. He had only broken it once. Fortunately, he had just mastered the Pure Heart Demon subduing art not long ago. With the help of the Pure Heart Dharma Eye, it became easier for him to break the formation. In the past, he would have to spend 7 to 8 days to break this supreme-grade heaven essence formation. But now, with the help of the Pure Heart Dharma Eye, he was confident that he could break it in 2 days. The Pure Heart Demon subduing art was a technique that Ji Tianqing had inherited from the deepest part of his soul. It was incomparably marvelous and its grade was unknown. As he used the Pure Heart Dharma Eye to break the formation, he had a deeper understanding of the power of this technique. It was truly rare in the world. He was even more certain that the grade of the Pure Heart Demon subduing art had not only surpassed the spirit level, it was highly possible that it was a primordial spirit level technique. According to the martial arts and knowledge of the Tian land, only elite warriors of the spirit refinement realm could forge spirit-level treasures, cultivate and perform spirit-level techniques. However, the pure heart demon subduing art was too marvelous. Ji Tianqing himself was also very special. He could perform a primordial spirit-level technique with the strength of the heaven essence realm. Chapter 739. Inside the illusion dust formation, in the boundless desert world. Ji Tianqing stood high in the sky, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He constantly struck out with his palms, injecting true essence into the formation. His golden eyes flickered with golden light, releasing a mysterious spell power as he stared at the dark sky. As he used the formation technique, his palms struck out with true essence, breaking a hole in the sky. Although it was only a palm-sized hole, it was as black as ink, like an extremely small black hole. However, as Ji Tianqing continued to crack the formation, the hole also slowly expanded. Not only did he have to crack the illusion dust formation and tear a hole in the sky, but he also had to resist the formation's recovery power. After all, after a hole was broken in the formation, it would automatically accumulate power to repair itself. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing's speed of cracking the formation was faster than the formation's recovery speed. Therefore, the black hole was slowly expanding and growing. Unknowingly, 12 hours had passed. The palm-sized black hole had already expanded to the size of a wash basin. However, this was not enough. Ji Tianqing did not stop. He continued to strike with his palms, releasing true essence to crack the formation. Soon, an entire day passed. The black hole continued to expand. It was already half a meter wide, which was the size of a large water tank. At this time, Ji Tianqing had been continuously casting spells for 24 hours. He had already used 40% of his true essence, and his strength was somewhat weak. He finally stopped casting spells. His eyes burned as he looked up at the black hole. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. It's finally done. The effects of the pure heart Dharma Eye are indeed miraculous. It actually allowed me to crack the supreme grade heavenly essence formation in one day. This was something that Ji Tianqing did not expect. The effects of the pure heart Dharma Eye were more powerful than he had imagined. He did not waste any more time. Without hesitation, he flew high into the sky and entered the black hole in a flash. Swoosh! In the next instant, he passed through the black hole and escaped the desert world. He finally returned to the mountain behind Cloud Soul Palace. A light flashed in front of his eyes, and his vision became bright and clear. When he focused his eyes, he saw that he was standing on a black stone path. On his left and right were dense forests. Above his head was the blue sky, and the warm sunlight shone down on his body. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had successfully passed through the great fantasy dust formation and returned to the black stone path at the back of the mountain. He raised his head and looked ahead. 100 steps away was the end of the path. There was a garden surrounded by gray-white stone pillars, and the garden was filled with lush spirit herbs and flowers. The spiritual grass was dark green and the spiritual flowers were colorful, emitting a refreshing fragrance. On the spirit trees, fragrant spirit fruits could be seen. Clearly, it was a medicinal garden. Ji Tianqing sized up the herb garden a few times, then stepped over the black stone path and walked to the edge of the herb garden. When he got closer, he discovered that the grayish-white stone pillars surrounding the herb garden also had other mysteries and had extraordinary effects. The stone pillars were engraved with array patterns that contained vast and mighty power. It could gather the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the entire back mountain to form a powerful array. The invisible array light shield was like an inverted bowl that enveloped the entire herb garden. This large array could not only protect the herb garden, but it could also provide rich spiritual chi for the spirit herbs and flowers in the garden, causing them to grow healthily. Ji Tianqing observed for a moment, then used his pure heart Dharma eye to crack the defensive array of the herb garden. This large array was also a supreme-grade heavenly essence array. In terms of setting up the array and structure, it was very similar to the Great Fantasy Dust Formation. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that the two large arrays were created by the same person. With the experience of cracking the Great Fantasy Dust Formation, he quickly cracked the defensive array of the herb garden. 4 hours later, he tore a gap in the large array and entered the herb garden through the gap. Ji Tianqing had learned the 1,000 medicine collection in the Sky Pillar sect and could identify thousands of medicinal herbs. However, as he strolled in the herb garden, he discovered that the medicinal herbs in this herb garden were all rare and precious spirit herbs. At least 70% to 80% of the medicinal herbs and flowers were top-notch spirit herbs that he could not identify. Unknowingly, he walked to the middle of the herb garden and saw a huge ancient tree standing in front of him. The towering tree was 100 meters tall, and its trunk was as thick as a pillar that supported the sky. Its branches and leaves were lush like a large umbrella that covered the sky, covering a radius of 1,000 meters. The towering ancient tree contained extremely vigorous power and emitted incomparably rich green wood spiritual qi. Ji Tianqing could see that this ancient tree was the core of the herb garden. It was the most powerful and precious medicinal tree in the garden. In the branches and leaves of the ancient tree, there were numerous fruits. They were all densely packed with green spiritual fruits. Each spiritual fruit was as big as an apple. They were sparkling and translucent, emitting a fragrant fruity fragrance that made people unconsciously swallow their saliva. It just so happened that Ji Tianqing had spent more than half of his strength to crack 2 large arrays in a row. His vital essence was depleted, and his body was exhausted. He did not think too much about it. He reached out and plucked 2 spiritual fruits from the tree and put them into his mouth to chew. After all, he cultivated Tianqing's 5 extreme secret techniques and controlled the power of green wood. Of course, he could see that there was no problem with these spiritual fruits, and they were quite effective. The spiritual fruits were crisp and sweet. They turned into a cool stream of sweet water that flowed down Ji Tianqing's throat into his stomach. Suddenly, he only felt that there was rolling vital qi in his body, and his pores were opened. It was an indescribable comfort and enjoyment. As expected of a top spiritual tree, the spiritual fruits it bears are so delicious. 2 more, Ji Tianqing praised in his heart. After eating 2 spiritual fruits, he could not help but pluck 2 more. But at this moment, the towering ancient tree, which was motionless, suddenly moved. The branches, leaves, and trunks around Ji Tianqing actually came to life. They were like arms that instantly wrapped around Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 In the blink of an eye, dozens of dark green branches as thick as arms wrapped around him and tied him up like a dumpling. Ji Tianqing frowned immediately and his eyes became fierce. He looked up at the crown of the tree and found that the dense branches and leaves of the towering ancient tree were shrinking rapidly. The spiritual fruits on the treetops were all hidden. The branches turned into vines and entangled him like tentacles. Moreover, rows of sharp spikes emerged from the branches that wrapped around him, trying to pierce through his clothes and into his flesh. Ji Tianqing hurriedly tried to break the branches and vines that entangled him. However, he found that the branches of the ancient tree were thousands of times tougher than fine iron. He could not break them. This spiritual tree has been growing for so many years that it has developed intelligence and evolved into a tree demon. It is a top tree demon of the Tianyuan realm. As this thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, he urged his majestic true essence to form a protective shield around his body to resist the pressure of the branches. However, the boundless true essence gushed out of his body, but before it could form a shield, it was swallowed and absorbed by the dozens of branches. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately understood. Chapter 740. In a short span of 100 breaths, there were hundreds of thick branches that completely wrapped Ji Tianqing. Countless branches intertwined, forming a dark green cocoon that trapped him inside. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free from the branches and could not escape from the cocoon formed by the branches. Fortunately, he had already mastered the ultimate sword body, and his physical defense had reached the extreme. His skin looked crystal clear, but it was actually thousands of times harder than steel. No matter how hard those branches and vines squeezed, they could not break his skin or injure his bones. No matter how sharp the thorns on the branches were, they could not pierce through his skin. He was trapped in the cocoon for 7 minutes and was still unharmed. Soon, Ji Tianqing calmed down and thought of a way. He used the ultimate skill of the Wood Emperor umbrella and released a majestic green wood power from his body, wanting to assimilate the tree branches and break free from the cocoon. Swoosh! 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 His body lit up with a rich green light that spread out in all directions. However, the tree branches greedily devoured the green wood spirit light, and in the blink of an eye, the green light was completely devoured. This scene made Ji Tianqing speechless. He thought to himself, "Damn it. This method actually doesn't work. Even if I release all my cultivation, it's not enough to fill the gaps between this tree demon's teeth." At this moment, a strange voice was transmitted through the branches to Ji Tianqing's ears. He. Little bug, stop struggling and give up resisting. Obediently become this king's food. This voice sounded like a young man's voice, but the tone was very strange and the accent was very bad. Ji Tianqing immediately understood that this was the tree demon's voice. Humph. You're just a lowly tree demon, but you dare to be so arrogant. Want to devour me as nourishment? You're not qualified. Ji Tianqing snorted disdainfully, a sharp cold light surging in his eyes. That tree demon was instantly enraged and sneered with a sharp voice, "You puny reptile, how dare you say that this king is lowly? This king is the Jade Green Demon King who occupies hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers in the Great Swamp. How dare you be so presumptuous? This king will eat you right now and show you how powerful this king is." Jade Green Demon King was a tree demon transformed from a 1,000-year-old tree. It wasn't a ferocious beast. Its intelligence was developed later and its growth was very slow. Thus, its intelligence wasn't high. It was enraged by Ji Tianqing, and immediately released a majestic green light from its branches, trying to strangle Ji Tianqing. More than 300 cyan light pillars were like sharp knives, crisscrossing and crushing Ji Tianqing. The pressure on Ji Tianqing suddenly increased. His skin was as red as blood, and his body was crushed and deformed. His bones and joints also made a kacha-kacha sound. Jade Green Demon King's furious attack had put him in danger, threatening his life. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing stretched out his right palm without hesitation and used his trump card. "You want to devour me? I want to see who will devour who." Ji Tianqing shouted coldly and immediately released the black hole in his palm. Swoosh! The black hole in his palm immediately expanded to the size of a bowl. Like a whirlpool, it released a terrifying devouring power. The hundreds of cyan light pillars released by Jade Green Demon King were instantly pulled by the devouring power and entered the black hole uncontrollably. In just a few breaths, more than 300 cyan light pillars were all devoured by the black hole. The majestic green wood energy flowed into Kenshin's tomb through the black hole and immediately replenished the heavenly sword steel with a huge amount of spiritual qi. Ji Tianqing and the heavenly sword steel equally divided the green wood spiritual qi and obtained a huge amount of spiritual qi, which was quickly converted into vital essence. His vital essence was immediately replenished. In just a few breaths, he had recovered 10% of his strength. Not bad, not bad. Although this tree demon is stupid, your energy is extremely pure. Just nice to help me recover my vital essence. Ji Tianqing sneered with satisfaction. His eyes revealed a mocking sneer. He continued to activate the black hole in his palm and madly devoured Jade Green Demon King's greenwood energy. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of branches and vines were also devoured. Ah! How can this be? What the hell is that? Jade Green Demon King was startled and let out a terrified shriek. Its lush branches and vines quickly retreated and fled back into the canopy in a panic. Ji Tianqing immediately regained his freedom as the branches around him all retreated. Swoosh! His figure flashed and flew 100 meters away. He caught up with a cluster of dark green vines and waved his right palm to release the black hole and quickly devoured the greenwood energy. In the blink of an eye, the greenwood energy in the hundreds of vines was completely devoured. The vines immediately withered and cracked. They no longer had any spiritual qi and were like dry firewood. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was replenished with a huge amount of spiritual qi. He recovered another 10% of his strength and became even stronger. He was also in a better mood. Jade Green Demon King saw the power of the black hole and panicked. It hurriedly sent a telepathic message, "Kid, don't push your luck. This is my territory. You've committed a grave crime by trespassing here. As long as you leave now, I won't hold it against you and can spare you." Before Jade Green Demon King could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted it with a cold smile. "Huh, you want to spare my life? Sorry. But I don't want to spare you." Ji Tianqing had tasted the benefits, so he naturally wouldn't let Jade Green Demon King go. He felt that the speed of devouring the branches was too slow, so he went into the lush canopy and stood on a tree trunk as thick as a water tank. He released the black hole from his right palm and stuck close to the thick tree trunk. It frantically devoured the greenwood energy in the ancient tree. Instantly, the greenwood energy in the ancient tree turned into a majestic greenwood torrent. It surged into the black hole and was transported into Kenshin's tomb. Ji Tianqing continued to absorb the massive amount of spiritual qi. His true essence quickly recovered to its peak state and continued to surge. Jade Green Demon King was shocked and furious. It immediately went crazy. It roared and cursed angrily. It waved its thick branches and vines, attacking Ji Tianqing with all its might. Ji Tianqing took out the Zone Lord's golden seal and used the seal of mountains and rivers to protect himself. He ignored Jade Green Demon King's attacks and focused on devouring the greenwood energy. No matter how ferocious Jade Green's attacks were, even when thousands of branches whipped at the seal of mountains and rivers, they couldn't harm Ji Tianqing at all. The greenwood energy it had accumulated over 1,000 years was quickly draining away. In a short 15 minutes, Ji Tianqing had devoured half of Jade Green Demon King's cultivation. His cultivation had reached its peak, and his strength was rapidly increasing. The heavenly sword steel in Kenshin's tomb was also filled with spiritual qi. The burial of heaven was also rapidly recovering and was about to awaken. But Jade Green Demon King's outcome was tragic and pitiful. The towering ancient tree, which was originally lush with leaves and flickering with green light, was now dispirited and lifeless, withering and withering. Hundreds of thousands of branches withered and fell to the ground. Half of the tree's leaves turned yellow and fell to the ground, forming a thick layer of fallen leaves. Chapter 741. The Jade Green Demon King was filled with remorse. If it had known that Ji Tianqing had such a mysterious and terrifying method, it would have pretended to be a tree without intelligence. It even wanted to devour him as nourishment. Now, it had gone for wool and come home shorn. Its hundreds of years of cultivation had been devoured by the other party instead. The entire tree had withered and withered, with countless withered branches and leaves falling from it. However, the mysterious black hole's power was extremely terrifying. It shrouded its body, making it unable to struggle or resist. The Jade-Green Demon King cursed for a while. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had no intention of stopping, it begged bitterly. "Young hero. I am just an old green maple tree. After thousands of years of nurturing by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, I have today's cultivation. I beg you to be merciful." Ji Tianqing remained silent. He focused on activating the black hole in his palm, madly devouring the ancient green maple tree's power. The vast and mighty greenwood power caused the heaven-reaching sword steel in Kenshin's tomb to be surrounded by spiritual qi. The burial of heaven also recovered its vitality and gradually awakened. Ji Tianqing's strength continued to increase. The vast greenwood power accumulated in his body was actually integrated into his limbs, bones, marrow, and flesh. His ultimate sword physique had a slight change. It was actually tempered by the greenwood power to become even stronger, and its vitality became even more boundless. He sensed that his body was actually gradually transforming into the greenwood spiritual body. The greenwood spiritual body was a rare heaven-level physique. It had all sorts of miraculous effects. Ordinary martial artists with this physique were considered top geniuses. They would definitely be able to cultivate to the heaven origin realm. This discovery made Ji Tianqing excited and full of anticipation. The Jade-Green Demon King became more and more indignant and desperate. It cried and begged, "Big brother! My lord! I beg you, you have already devoured my power for more than 500 years. Spare my old life." Ji Tianqing ignored it and continued to use the black hole to devour its pure power. He wanted to use this opportunity to refine the greenwood spiritual body. However, at this moment, a tall and sturdy figure suddenly flew out from the depths of the herb garden. That figure was a white-haired old man in a green robe. His complexion was rosy, and his spirit was hale and hearty. His entire body gave off the aura of an extraordinary expert. He flew to the top of the ancient green maple tree, and after seeing the situation clearly, his expression changed and he shouted anxiously, "Stop! Stop!" Ji Tianqing was immediately awakened by this voice. He raised his head and glanced at the green-robed elder in the sky. "No, I'm so close to achieving the azure wood spiritual body." As this thought flashed through his mind, he turned a deaf ear to the green-robed elder's words. He continued to use the black hole in his palm to devour the ancient tree's greenwood power. When the green-robed old man saw that the towering ancient tree had withered and its leaves had turned yellow, his heart ached and his mouth twitched. He revealed an extremely anxious expression. "Brat! Stop it! If you don't stop, this old man won't be polite anymore." The green-robed elder glared fiercely at Ji Tianqing and shouted angrily with a dignified voice. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at him. He asked expressionlessly, "Senior, who are you? Why are you interfering in my feud with this tree demon?" The green-robed elder frowned and said in a dignified tone, "This old man is the guardian of this herb garden. Brat, what feud do you have with the Jade-Green Demon King? Its roots have been set up with a restriction, so it can only stay in the herb garden and can't move. You must have barged into the herb garden without permission, so you were attacked by the Jade-Green Demon King. You brat, not only did you barge into the herb garden, but you also injured this old man's ancient green maple tree. How should you be punished?" Hearing the green-robed elder's words, Ji Tianqing was naturally unconvinced. He retorted, "Senior, you're slandering me. I only barged into this herb garden by accident. This tree demon was too cruel and wanted to devour me as nourishment. It wanted to take my life. Can't I resist?" The green-robed elder was at a loss for words after being refuted, but he still shouted angrily, "Who are you? Why did you barge into the herb garden? Stop what you're doing and let the ancient green maple tree go. Otherwise, this old man won't go easy on you." Ji Tianqing snorted and said unhappily, "This tree demon almost killed me. How can I forgive it so easily? Unless you make it apologize to me, I won't agree. While Ji Tianqing was arguing with the green-robed elder, the black hole in his right palm was not idle. It was madly devouring the Jade Green Demon King's power. The green-robed elder could not stand it anymore. He no longer wasted his breath on him and attacked with a low shout. "Brat, you're being unreasonable. This old man can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. Accept your punishment." The moment he said that, the green-robed elder raised his right hand and waved his sleeve. A huge five-colored palm that covered the sky slammed down from the sky. Swoosh! The five-colored palm with a radius of 10 meters was like a mountain crashing down. It instantly slammed down on Ji Tianqing's head. The air in all directions was suddenly squeezed and the space seemed to be sealed. The immense pressure caused Ji Tianqing's expression to change. Deep fear appeared in his eyes. He could immediately determine that the green-robed elder was either a half-step soul refinement realm cultivator or a soul refinement realm cultivator. At this critical moment, he raised his left palm without hesitation and activated the power of the true scarlet fire. Sky-burning palm. His left arm turned red like magma. Scarlet fire spewed out from his palm and condensed into a huge flaming palm that slammed into the five-colored palm. The black hole in his right hand was still devouring the Jade Green Demon King's power and rapidly refining the azure wood spiritual body. Boom! Amidst the deafening loud noise, the burning sky palm and the five-colored giant palm fiercely collided, exploding into flames that blotted out the sky and the sun, blowing up a violent and terrifying hurricane. The fire borrowed the wind's momentum and swept across the ancient green maple tree violently, turning the lush canopy into a sea of fire. The withered branches and withered leaves that had been drained of their azure wood power instantly ignited into a raging fire and black smoke rose into the sky. The Jade Green Demon King suffered and let out a painful cry. He was so angry and depressed that he almost vomited blood. The sky-burning palm blocked the green-robed elder's attack. The two giant palms shattered at the same time and quickly dissipated into the sky. The green-robed elder saw that Ji Tianqing had blocked his attack and was unharmed. His pupils constricted and he revealed a shocked expression. You brat, can actually block this old man's attack?" Although the green-robed elder only used 30% of his strength, it was comparable to a half-step soul refinement realm cultivator. He originally thought that the palm strike just now would definitely be able to severely injure Ji Tianqing. The result was beyond his expectations and made him even more curious about Ji Tianqing. Of course, the ancient green maple tree was burned to a terrible state. Many of its branches were bare, which made him even more furious. "Kid, I didn't expect you to have some ability. I'd like to see if you can block this attack." After saying that, the green-robed elder waved his right hand again and shot out 3 giant swords that were dazzling with golden light toward Ji Tianqing. At the same time, Ji Tianqing's body emitted a azure wood spiritual light and a majestic aura. Chapter 742. When Ji Tianqing refined the greenwood spiritual body, a mighty surge of true essence erupted from his body. His strength had increased tremendously. He was one step closer to Sky Origin Stage LV7. Moreover, his life force had doubled. His lifespan had reached the limit of Sky Origin Stage. It was close to 500 years. Such a huge gain made him feel gratified and excited. However, the 3 golden swords from the elder in green robes were about to hit his head with a destructive force. It looked like an ordinary move. It was just a casual move from the elder in green robes. However, he was a powerful soul-tempering stage cultivator after all. His swords were extremely powerful. The 3 golden swords were about 30 meters long. Not only did they have an indestructible sword intent, but they also contained the formless power of the realm. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the space within 1,000 meters was sealed by the power of the realm. The space was almost frozen. Ji Tianqing was suppressed by the power of the realm. He could not escape or dodge. All he could do was watch the golden swords coming down. The only thing he could do was to block them. At this critical moment, he used the seal of mountains and rivers without hesitation. Swoosh! The seal of mountains and rivers emitted a dazzling golden light. It expanded 1,000 times and became as big as a house. It floated above Ji Tianqing's head and protected him. In the next moment, the 3 golden swords hit the seal of mountains and rivers. Clang! 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 3 deafening sounds of metal clashing echoed in the herb garden. The incomparably sharp golden light sword was shattered on the spot, exploding into millions of golden light shards that scattered in all directions. The poor jade green monster king was hit again. Many of its branches and leaves were destroyed by the violent energy and the golden shards. It screamed in pain. The flowers and plants around the ancient tree were torn apart by the violent wind. It was a mess. Even the ground of the herb garden was hit by the wind. Countless holes were formed in the ground. The seal of mountains and rivers blocked the attack of the golden swords. Ji Tianqing was unharmed. Seeing this scene, the green-robed old man frowned fiercely, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. It's a soul-level magical treasure? Who is this kid? He actually possesses a soul-grade magic treasure? Although the green-robed elder didn't recognize that the seal of mountains and rivers was a region lord's golden seal, the green-robed elder didn't recognize it. But he also understood that a young expert that was capable of possessing a soul-grade magic treasure surely had an extraordinary background. Brat, who are you? Tell me your name. The green-robed old man temporarily stopped his attack and stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze as he asked in a deep voice. Ji Tianqing put away the seal of mountains and rivers and looked at him indifferently. He said expressionlessly, "Do you think this matter can be written off if I tell you my name?" The old man frowned and shouted in a dignified voice, "You wish." You barged into the herb garden without permission and heavily injured this old man's ancient green maple tree. How can this old man let you off so easily? No matter who you are or what kind of background you have, this old man will take you down today and punish you severely. As he spoke, the green-robed old man slowly raised his hands, and his entire body emitted a powerful and domineering aura. Previously, he had been attacking with one hand and had only used 30% of his power. In the end, he had not been able to capture Ji Tianqing in 2 consecutive moves. Not only did he lose face, but he had also worsened Jade Green Demon King's injuries. He was finally enraged. He was going to use all his power to take down Ji Tianqing in one fell swoop. As the green-robed old man activated his power, strong winds blew in all directions in the sky. The air also became violent and fierce. The entire herb garden was sealed by an invisible force and was about to form a domain. Finally, the green-robed old man's aura reached its peak and was about to attack. Ji Tianqing also acted as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He exploded with all his power and was about to use his trump card to block the old man's attack. Right at this moment, a clear and melodious voice came from outside the herb garden. "Tianqing! Tianqing, where are you?" This was a woman's voice. It was like the sound of nature and contained a hint of coldness. However, this voice was filled with anxiety and worry. When the green-robed old man and Ji Tianqing heard this voice, their expressions changed, and they quickly stopped attacking. The two of them turned to look at the entrance of the herb garden at the same time. The battle intent that had accumulated in their bodies was quickly withdrawn. Soon after, a beautiful woman in a long white dress with an aura as cold as a fairy appeared at the entrance of the herb garden. She was blocked outside by the herb garden's defensive array and was looking into the garden anxiously. When the green-robed old man saw her, he immediately withdrew his mysterious and vast power and flew over with a smile. Swoosh! His figure flashed and teleported to the entrance of the herb garden. His eyes were gentle as he asked in a kind tone, "Yao Yao, why are you here?" Without a doubt, this beautiful woman in a white dress who had arrived unexpectedly was Yun Yao. When she saw the kind-looking green-robed old man, she immediately revealed a faint smile and quickly bowed. "Yao Yao greets grandfather." The green-robed old man nodded with a smile. He waved his hand to open the herb garden's gate and removed the defensive array. Yun Yao quickly stepped into the herb garden and walked to the front of the green-robed old man. She asked, "Grandfather, have you seen Tianqing? Has he been here before?" "Tianqing?" The green-robed old man frowned and revealed a puzzled look. "You mean Ji Tianqing? Is he the Mr. Right that your father told me about?" Yun Yao lowered her head shyly. She nodded and said, "Yes, that's him. He's wearing a white robe and is about 18 or 19 years old. He's tall and straight and has a handsome face." When the green-robed old man heard her words, his expression suddenly became a little strange. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at Ji Tianqing in the herb garden. Yun Yao followed his gaze and immediately saw Ji Tianqing in the sky. "Tianqing, you're really here." When she saw Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief. There was a hint of joy in her voice. However, she immediately saw the scene in the herb garden. The half-withered ancient green maple tree, as well as the craters and broken flowers on the ground, undoubtedly proved that a battle had taken place here before. How smart was Yun Yao? When she saw the mess in the herb garden, she immediately guessed the reason. Her expression suddenly changed. She looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief and then looked at the green-robed old man beside her. "Grandpa, did you get into a fight with Tianqing just now?" The green-robed old man's face was instantly filled with shock. He didn't know how to answer Yun Yao. He turned his head to look at Ji Tianqing and said in a strange tone, "You're Ji Tianqing? The number one genius of the human race that Yun Zhongqi mentioned, the emperor of the monarch mansion and the ruler of the Tianshan region, is that you?" Ji Tianqing flew to the entrance of the herb garden and came to the side of the green-robed old man and Yun Yao. He was also shocked. He looked at the green-robed old man with a complicated expression and asked in disbelief, "You're Yao Yao's grandfather? Then aren't you Miracle Dr. Bailey?" Chapter 743. Seeing their reactions, Yun Yao was even more certain of her guess. She looked at Ji Tianqing with concern and asked worriedly, "Tianqing, why did you come to Grandpa's herb garden? Did he hurt you?" Yun Yao's concern warmed Ji Tianqing's heart. When Miracle Dr. Bailey heard her words, he became even more embarrassed and sighed inwardly, sigh. Girls are really biased towards outsiders. Ji Tianqing waved his hand at Yun Yao and comforted her, "Yao Yao, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. Just now, I had a misunderstanding with Miracle Dr. Bailey, so we had a conflict and exchanged a few moves. However, he showed mercy and I wasn't hurt." "Oh right, Yao Yao, how did you find this place?" Yun Yao saw that he wasn't injured and felt slightly relieved. She quickly explained, "I've been waiting for you at the Spirit Spring in the back mountain for a long time, but you didn't come to find me. I looked for you everywhere in Cloud Spirit Palace but couldn't find you, so I personally went to Hefeng Garden. The maid in Hefeng Garden told me that you had already gone to the back mountain to find me. I guessed that you couldn't find the place and most likely went the wrong way, so I came here to find you. I didn't expect you to be here." Hearing her words, Ji Tianqing finally understood what had happened and vaguely understood something. Yun Yao looked at Miracle Dr. Bailey and said with a slightly reproachful tone, "Grandpa, you're a great expert in the spirit refining realm. How can you fight with a junior? Moreover, Tianqing almost lost his life in order to save me." He even lost a lot of his vitality. If I came a little later, I don't know what kind of trouble would have happened. Miracle Dr. Bailey loved Yunyao very much. He had been traveling the world all these years and couldn't take care of Yunyao and Bailey Ningsu. He was full of guilt. Hearing Yunyao's words, although he was a little depressed and wronged, he wasn't angry at all. His old face revealed a bitter smile and explained to Yunyao, "Yao Yao, you can't blame Grandpa for this. Grandpa was taking care of the herbs in the garden. Who knew that this kid would suddenly break into the herb garden and use a secret technique to devour the ancient green maple tree's power? That ancient green maple tree was an ancient species that grandfather had spent a few years to find in the great swamp of the southern wasteland. It was extremely rare and precious. This kid, not only did he devour the ancient green maple tree's power, he also almost destroyed the entire ancient green maple tree. Yao, tell me, how can Grandpa not be angry? Grandpa doesn't know him and he didn't tell us his name. Of course, Grandpa has to punish him." After Yunyao finished listening to Divine Dr. Bailey's words, she understood the course of events. She furrowed her brows and pulled Miracle Dr. Bailey's arm. She acted like a spoiled child and said, "Grandfather, this is a misunderstanding. You can't blame Tianqing. He was originally recuperating at his residence. I sent someone to find him and asked him to come to the spirit spring behind the mountain to find me. He's not familiar with the roads in Cloud Spirit Palace. He might have taken the wrong path and accidentally came here. He definitely wouldn't destroy your ancient green maple tree on purpose." Seeing Yunyao defend Ji Tianqing, Miracle Dr. Bailey didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The illusion dust array is set up outside. The herb garden also has a defensive array. How could he accidentally break in? Grandpa told you how to activate the illusion dust array. That's why you could pass through the array and come here. Miracle Dr. Bailey was stunned when he said this. He immediately reacted and thought of a problem. He looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes and asked, "Kid, how did you break in? Did you break the illusion dust array and the herb garden's defensive array?" Miracle Dr. Bailey stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. His tone was strange and his heart was filled with anticipation. Subconsciously, he didn't believe that Ji Tianqing could break the two arrays. After all, that was the supreme grade heaven essence array that he personally set up. It was very mysterious and powerful. But Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and explained, "I did break the two arrays. However, this is all a misunderstanding." Before he could finish, Miracle Dr. Bailey's eyes widened in disbelief as he let out a cry of surprise. "That's the supreme grade heaven essence array that I personally set up. You actually broke it in a short day? How is this possible?" Ji Tianqing smiled embarrassedly and didn't reply. Yunyao revealed a proud look and said to Miracle Dr. Bailey, "Grandpa, you might not know, but Tianqing's array attainments are already worthy of being called an array grandmaster. Arrays below the spirit rank can't stump him at all." Miracle Dr. Bailey was even more shocked. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and murmured, "No wonder Yun Zhongqi is so generous with his praise and favors you so much. Kid, you're only at Sky Origin Stage 6, but you can block 2 of my attacks and even break my array. You're indeed a prodigy." When Miracle Dr. Bailey had just returned to Cloud Spirit Palace, Yun Zhongqi had told him about Ji Tianqing and Yunyao. Not only did Yun Zhongqi introduce Ji Tianqing's background, but he also told him about his many glorious deeds. He was very satisfied with him. Miracle Dr. Bailey doted on Yunyao. Naturally, he loved her and her dog. He also had a good impression of Yunyao's Mr. Right and had always wanted to find a chance to meet him. Today, he finally met Ji Tianqing with his own eyes. Although the way they met was a little special and the process was a little awkward. However, he had personally fought with Ji Tianqing and knew Ji Tianqing's strength better. That was why he sighed. Yunyao saw that her grandfather's impression of Ji Tianqing had changed significantly. The atmosphere was also much more relaxed. She took the opportunity to say, "Grandfather, this is just a misunderstanding. Tianqing didn't mean to offend you. You're a magnanimous old man. Please don't be so calculative with Tianqing, right?" Ji Tianqing also quickly bowed to Miracle Dr. Bailey and said apologetically, "Miracle Dr. Bailey, I didn't know your identity just now. Please forgive me for offending you." Miracle Dr. Bailey's anger had already dissipated by more than half. Although the ancient green maple tree was tortured half to death and it made his heart ache. However, for Yunyao's sake, he didn't pursue Ji Tianqing's crime. He stroked his white beard and slightly nodded. "Since Yao Yao is so protective of you and this matter is just a misunderstanding, how can this old man not let it go? Ji Tianqing, this old man won't be calculative with you for Yao Yao's sake. This matter is over. Fortunately, the ancient green maple tree hasn't been destroyed. This old man will take care of it for a few years and it will slowly recover." Seeing that Miracle Dr. Bailey forgave Ji Tianqing, Yunyao immediately smiled and said to him, "I knew it. Grandpa, you're the most magnanimous person." "Thank you, Grandpa." The level of flattery wasn't high, but it made Miracle Dr. Bailey very happy as a kind smile appeared on his face. He looked at Yunyao with an amiable expression and said, "All right, Yao Yao. You take Tianqing back first. Grandpa still has to clean up the mess in the medicinal garden." Unexpectedly, Yunyao didn't have the intention to leave. She said with a face full of expectation, "Grandpa, Tianqing was eroded by the blood-dissipating curse and his vitality has been greatly damaged. Yao Yao knows that your medical skills are unparalleled in the world. You can definitely help him recuperate and recover his vitality, right?" Hearing her words, Miracle Dr. Bailey suddenly stared blankly. He frowned and asked, "Yao Yao, you want Grandpa to treat him?" "Of course." Yunyao quickly nodded and said with a smile, "Yao Yao wanted to bring Tianqing to see you before and ask you to treat him. Since you've seen Tianqing today, why don't you take this opportunity to treat him?" Miracle Dr. Bailey pondered and didn't speak, but he secretly smiled bitterly in his heart. Chapter 744. Miracle Dr. Bailey remained silent, seemingly unwilling to help. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing quickly persuaded Yunyao, "Yao Yao, there's no need to trouble Miracle Dr. Bailey. I've already removed the blood-dissipating curse. My injuries and strength have recovered. It's nothing serious." Yunyao shook her head and said in a concerned tone, "Tianqing, although you're fine now, the blood-dissipating curse is very vicious. What if there are hidden dangers? Grandpa's medical skills are unparalleled in the world. Let him take a look at your condition. Only then can I be completely relieved." After saying that, she looked at Miracle Dr. Bailey with eyes full of expectation and said eagerly, "Grandpa, please help Yao Yao this time." Sigh, Miracle Dr. Bailey sighed helplessly. He couldn't resist Yunyao's persistence, so he nodded and agreed. "Yao Yao, you've already said so much. How can Grandpa not help you?" He looked at Ji Tianqing and slowly stretched out his right hand, releasing an invisible force of divine soul that shrouded Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and refused. He said seriously, "Miracle Dr. Bailey, you really don't have to help me." Before he could finish, Miracle Dr. Bailey frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Cut the crap. Don't take advantage of me. I'll help you check your injuries. You just stand there obediently." Ji Tianqing was suddenly speechless and smiled bitterly in his heart. Sigh. It seems that I've offended Yao Yao's grandpa today. The old man has a big opinion of me. Seeing that Miracle Dr. Bailey seemed to be angry, he couldn't refuse anymore. He could only stand still and let Miracle Dr. Bailey use his divine soul to check him. Miracle Dr. Bailey's divine soul shrouded Ji Tianqing silently and carefully checked his condition. Whether it was his skin, flesh, internal organs, or bone marrow, nothing could hide under the investigation of Divine Soul. It didn't take long for Miracle Dr. Bailey to figure out his physical condition. This brat's body is completely unharmed. It doesn't look like he was affected by the blood dissipation curse at all. Divine Dr. Bailey furrowed his brows as a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. Manipulating his spiritual energy, he continued to investigate and analyze. Soon, he discovered something else that surprised him. This kid's skin, flesh, blood, and bones are actually so tough. No wonder the ancient green maple tree was unable to pierce through his skin. His physical body had been tempered to the extreme, comparable to a half-step soul refinement realm expert. This kid actually has the Greenwood spiritual body. With such a rare heaven-grade physique, he can indeed be called a top genius. No wonder he could devour the power of the ancient green maple tree. Divine Dr. Bailey was full of shock and expectation. He continued to use the soul secret technique to investigate Ji Tianqing's situation more carefully. This brat's meridians are very strange. A normal person only had 9 main meridians, but he actually had 18 meridians. Moreover, every meridian was shining with golden light and had been tempered to become incomparably tough. He actually had 108 acupoints. 36 more acupoints than a normal person. This is too inconceivable, isn't it? I've lived for 300 years and have never seen such strange meridians and acupoints. What kind of freak is he? He actually has such an unprecedented physique. The more Divine Dr. Bailey investigated, the more secrets he discovered, and the more shocked he was. He even felt that his horizons had been broadened. He could not believe that there was actually someone in this world who had such a miraculous physique. As a divine doctor, he was clearer than anyone that the physical body, meridians and acupoints were the foundation of martial arts. It determined a martial artist's martial arts talent. For a special physique like Ji Tianqing, not only did he have incomparable martial arts talent, his future martial arts achievements were also unimaginable. This kid's physique is so special. I wonder what the Yuan Dan he condensed would be like. This thought flashed across Divine Dr. Bailey's mind as he used his spiritual energy to investigate Ji Tianqing's Dantian. However, when his spiritual energy reached the vicinity of Ji Tianqing's Dantian, it was blocked by an invisible mysterious force. He could not detect the situation of Ji Tianqing's Dantian at all. All he could see was a blurry gray fog. This kid's Dantian is actually protected by a mysterious and powerful force. Even my spiritual energy cannot detect it. How can this be? How can this be? What kind of secret is this kid hiding in his body? Divine Dr. Bailey was even more shocked. His heart was filled with horror and disbelief. No matter how knowledgeable he was, he had never encountered such a situation. No wonder this kid is known as the #1 genius of the human race. He has such powerful strength at such a young age. With his martial arts talent and aptitude, he will soon become a spirit cultivation realm expert. It is even highly possible that he will break through to the primordial soul realm within 100 years. A primordial soul realm expert who is not even 100 years old. He is definitely an unprecedented genius. No, he is an exceptional demon. Thinking of this, Miracle Dr. Bailey's heart was set off stormy waves, giving birth to thick excitement. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. While he was excited, he also felt proud and gratified for Yun Yao. Yao Yao really has a good eye for talent. She can actually pick out a demon like Ji Tianqing from the masses. No wonder Yao Yao is so infatuated with him and Yun Zhongqi likes him so much. In the entire Middle State, there is no one more outstanding than Ji Tianqing. Divine Dr. Bailey was not only a spirit cultivation realm expert but also a peerless divine doctor. His judgment and knowledge were very unique and accurate. He had never seen Ji Tianqing before. He had only heard about Ji Tianqing from Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu. At that time, he did not believe that Ji Tianqing was that outstanding. He had always been skeptical. Today, he saw Ji Tianqing with his own eyes. He even checked Ji Tianqing's talent, foundation, and physique. He finally believed Yun Zhongqi's words. In fact, he even felt that Yun Zhongqi's evaluation of Ji Tianqing wasn't accurate enough. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing was more than the number one genius of the human race. In the entire Tianxian continent, there was no one more outstanding than Ji Tianqing. This kid could be called the number one genius of the continent. Thinking of this, Divine Dr. Bailey quickly retracted his divine soul. He nodded excitedly and praised with a gratified face, "Good. Good. That's great." Ji Tianqing and Yunyao were confused by Zhang Xian's agitated reaction. They were filled with doubt. Yunyao frowned and asked in confusion, "Grandpa, what's wrong with you? What's great?" Cough, cough. Divine Dr. Bailey came back to his senses and pretended to cough to cover up his embarrassment. His expression became calm again. Stroking his white beard, he said to Yunyao with a kind face, "Of course, I'm talking about Ji Tianqing's injuries. I've checked him carefully. There's no injury in his body, and there's no remnant of the curse. He can't be any better." Yunyao was relieved when she heard this. However, she felt that her grandfather's reaction was a little strange. She asked worriedly, "Grandfather, you're not lying to me, right? Is Tianqing really okay?" Divine Dr. Bailey stared at her and said in a dignified tone, "You child. How could I lie to you?" Yunyao was completely relieved. She bowed to him and said, "Thank you for your help, grandfather." Ji Tianqing also bowed to him and thanked him. Divine Dr. Bailey stroked his beard and nodded calmly, "All right, if there's nothing else, you can go back. Grandfather, we won't disturb you anymore. We'll take our leave now." Yunyao hurriedly bowed and took her leave. Then, she left the herb garden with Ji Tianqing. Divine Dr. Bailey stood at the entrance of the herb garden. Looking at Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's backs, a gratified smile flashed in his eyes. Chapter 745. An hour later, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao left the back of the mountain and returned to Hefeng Garden. After closing the door, the two of them entered the study and began to talk secretly. Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing and asked in a serious tone, "Tianqing, I asked the maid, Aju, to look for you. How did you go the wrong way and run to grandfather's herb garden? Didn't Aju bring you there personally?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "The maid said that servants were not allowed to enter the forbidden area, so she pointed the way for me and told me to go right. I walked along the path on the right and broke into an illusion array. After I broke the array, I arrived at the entrance of Miracle Dr. Bailey's herb garden." "I see." Yunyao suddenly understood. A cold light flashed in her eyes as she thought to herself, "Aju has been in Cloud Spirit Palace for 20 years and is very familiar with the situation in the palace. She must know that the left side of the fork is the spirit spring, and the right side is grandfather's herb garden. It seems that she deliberately pointed Tianqing the wrong way, which caused Tianqing to fall into the illusion array and break into grandfather's herb garden." Thinking of this, Yunyao's expression turned cold, and a trace of anger surged in her heart. Aju is just a maid. She definitely doesn't have the guts to frame Tianqing. It's most likely that cousin ordered her to do it. Why did cousin do this? That illusion array is not a killing array, so it won't endanger Tianqing's life. However, Tianqing is trapped in the illusion array. If he can't break the array, he will be trapped for at least half a month. Why did cousin set up a trap to trap Tianqing? It's clearly the first time he met Tianqing, and he doesn't have any grudges with Tianqing. Moreover, cousin has always been very sensible and is deeply valued and trusted by my mother. Thinking of this, Yun Yao's body suddenly stiffened, and a thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that my mother ordered cousin to do this? On the surface, she accepted Tianqing, but in reality, she still doesn't agree with me being with Tianqing? Yun Yao's mood suddenly became a little gloomy, and her eyes became disappointed and angry. Tianqing sensed that something was wrong with her and hurriedly asked, Yao Yao, what's wrong? Yun Yao came back to her senses and shook her head gently. I'm fine. I'm just a little scared and relieved. Fortunately, I arrived in time and Grandpa didn't hurt you. If I had been a little late, the consequences would have been unimaginable. There would have been no way to resolve this matter. Tianqing quickly comforted her. Ao Yao, you worry too much. Dr. Bailey is a highly respected senior who is benevolent. Even if he's angry, he won't kill me. At most, he'll capture me and punish me. Yun Yao nodded and said with a tone of self-blame, Tianqing, I didn't think this through and was careless. I thought that there wouldn't be any conspiracies in my own home, so I let my guard down. I didn't expect that I would almost make a big mistake. Later, I will send a trusted maid to serve you in Hefeng Garden. If there's anything, I will let her pass on the message. Tianqing originally wanted to refuse, but he was afraid that Yun Yao would be worried, so he nodded and agreed. That's good. At least no one will have a chance to take advantage of this. I didn't expect that Cloud Spirit Palace isn't peaceful either. Someone actually wants to harm me. From now on, I will be more careful and won't cause you any trouble. Yun Yao held his hands and gently shook her head. Tianqing, as long as it's related to you, it's not trouble to me. I'm not afraid of trouble. I'm only afraid that you will be hurt. Tianqing nodded and smiled. He opened his arms and hugged her. The two of them hugged each other intimately and snuggled tightly together. Although the two of them did not speak, their minds were connected. They understood each other's worries and concerns. The two of them were affectionate for a while. Then Yun Yao stood up and left Hefeng Garden. After she left Hefeng Garden, it was almost noon. Yun Yao didn't go back to her palace. She went straight to Zhu Fifan's residence to find him. Half an hour later, she entered the house where Zhu Fifan lived. When the guards at the gate saw her, they didn't dare to stop or ask questions. They immediately knelt on the ground and saluted her respectfully. Greetings, miss. Yun Yao ignored them. She stepped through the gate with a frosty face, passed through the house full of elixirs, and walked into the dignified hall and living room. Two clever maids quickly poured tea for her and prepared a seat for her. However, Yun Yao stood in the hall expressionlessly. She had no intention of sitting down. She ordered in a cold voice, "Go and report to the young master. Ask him to come to the hall to see me." The two maids were stunned. They could tell that Yun Yao didn't come with good intentions, so they quickly left the hall to report the news. It didn't take long for Zhu Fifan to come after hearing the news. He gracefully stepped into the hall with a purple jade folding fan. When he saw Yun Yao's figure, he immediately showed a warm smile and said in a gentle tone, "Cousin Yao Yao, why do you suddenly want to see your cousin today? Cousin, don't stand there. Please sit down and talk." Zhu Fifan walked to Yun Yao and asked her to sit down and drink tea. However, Yun Yao glanced at him indifferently and said in a deep voice, "Ask the servants to leave. I have something to tell you." Zhu Fifan's heart suddenly thumped when he saw her reaction. He had a bad premonition. However, he remained calm on the surface and still maintained a gentle and elegant smile. He waved his hand to signal the maids and guards to leave. When the servants left and only the two of them were left in the hall, Zhu Fifan said calmly, "Cousin Yao Yao, you can say what you want to say now." Yun Yao looked at him sharply and said in a cold and firm tone, "Zhu Fifan, Tianqing is my husband. I won't marry anyone else but him in this life. I must grow old with him. No one, not even my mother, can stop me from being with Tianqing. Zhu Fifan pretended not to understand the meaning of her words. He nodded with a smile and said, "Of course, Tianqing and you are a match made in heaven. A talented man and a beautiful woman, a perfect match. Even if concubine doesn't agree with you being together for the time being, she will accept Ji Tianqing sooner or later. As for me, I have always blessed you from the beginning to the end. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you about the Nirvana crystal and helped you save Ji Tianqing." Yunyao frowned slightly and said in a cold tone, "Since you know this, you should learn to be smarter and stop having crooked thoughts. If you are stubborn and dare to do something unfavorable to Tianqing, don't blame me for being ruthless. At that time, there will be no place for you in Yunling Palace." Zhu Fifan's face suddenly stiffened and showed a startled expression. He asked in confusion, "Yao Yao, what are you talking about? Why can't I understand what you are saying? How can I be unfavorable to Tianqing? Did you misunderstand something?" Yunyao glanced at him, but didn't want to waste her breath on him. She said in a deep voice, "You don't have to say more. I know the truth." Chapter 746. After Yunyao said this, she turned around and walked out of the hall. She quickly left. Zhu Fifan stood in the hall and looked at Yunyao's back as she left. His face turned gloomy. "I didn't expect that I couldn't hide it from Yunyao. She figured out the truth so quickly. Ji Tianqing, that brat, was trapped in the illusion dust array. How could he break it so quickly? What kind of freak is he? I have been very careful, but I still underestimated him." Zhu Fifan's handsome face was faintly cold. His eyes were flickering with a cold light, as well as a strong hatred. "Even though I have been living in Cloud Spirit Palace for 20 years and have been working for Aunt Yunyao loyally, they still don't treat me as their family. On the contrary, Ji Tianqing, that bastard, has only been to Cloud Spirit Palace twice and hasn't married Yunyao yet. Now, they treat him as their family. Yunyao threatened me and even wanted to kick me out of Cloud Spirit Palace for Ji Tianqing. I have had enough of the humiliation of living under someone else's roof." Zhu Fifan roared in his heart. Deep humiliation and anger caused his face to contort and his eyes to surge with deep hatred. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed. Today was the 5th day that Ji Tianqing had been living in Cloud Spirit Palace. Since that incident, Ji Tianqing had been staying in Hefeng Garden to practice the pure heart demon subduing skill. He didn't even step out of the door of the small courtyard. As he continued to practice, he had a deeper understanding of the pure heart demon subduing skill. He felt that this skill was mysterious and powerful. He had made up his mind to practice the pure heart demon subduing skill in addition to practicing the sword heart Dao in order to improve his strength rapidly. For the past 2 days, he had been practicing in seclusion in his room. The little black dragon had been sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Although it had expressed that it wanted to find the dragon crystal as soon as possible so that it could advance to heaven origin stage smoothly. However, it also knew that Ji Tianqing was busy with other things and didn't have time to help it find the dragon crystal. It could only suppress this thought at the bottom of its heart and silently cultivate to increase its strength. Xianyu, on the other hand, could not stay idle. After staying in the 100 treasures brocade pouch for 2 days, she felt bored and wanted to go out for some fresh air. Ji Tianqing did not stop it and allowed it to go out and play. It enjoyed the scenery and beauties in Cloud Soul Palace. After all, there were countless maids and maidservants in Cloud Spirit Palace. They were all beautiful and pleasing to the eye. Of course, when Xianyu was playing around in Cloud Spirit Palace, she remembered Ji Tianqing's warning and did not cause any trouble. On the contrary, it was very smart and well-behaved. It was deeply loved by the maidservants of Cloud Soul Palace and played with them very happily. Cloud Spirit Palace was peaceful and peaceful. The atmosphere was harmonious and calm. There were only 5 days left until Divine Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet. The entire Yun family was busy with this matter. The palace was filled with a festive atmosphere. Many servants and maids had already begun to decorate the palace with lanterns and banners. That night, the night sky was dark, with no stars or moon. There was a city thousands of miles away from Cloud Soul Palace called Autumn Wind City. This ancient city had a history of 800 years and exuded an ancient and vigorous aura. Autumn Wind City was very quiet at night. There were very few people on the streets. In a certain deep house in the south of the city, a few dim yellow lights were lit. In a secret room in the depths of the house, 2 middle-aged men were whispering to each other. One of them was thin and had a resolute and dignified face. He sat upright on a large white jade chair. This man wore a square azure crown and had a goatee on his chin. He was the head of the Duanmu family, Duanmu Huang. The other middle-aged man wore a purple robe and had a tall and burly figure. His eyes faintly flashed with a frightening cold light and his entire body was filled with killing intent. This man was the hall master of the Hall of Soul Husbandry, Xing Jian. He stood in front of Duanmu Huang and said in a respectful tone, "Master, I have already completed the task you asked me to do. I've already informed the spy, and she'll be here soon." Hearing this, Duanmu Huang slightly nodded and revealed a cold smile. Many years ago, when I decided to deal with Cloud Soul Palace, I had already placed many spies in Cloud Soul Palace. After so many years, many of my spies have been exposed and eliminated by the Yun family. Only Luo was hidden the deepest. Not only was she not discovered or suspected, but she was also highly valued by the Yun family and became their trusted aide. This time, she can finally be put to good use. As the hall master of the soul-hurting hall, Xing Jian was a cruel and bloodthirsty assassin. He was not good at flattery. He did not take the opportunity to flatter. Instead, he asked in confusion, "Master, in order to not expose Luo's identity, you have not contacted her for so many years. Why did you suddenly contact her tonight? Could it be that you have already arranged the next step of the plan?" Duanmu Huang nodded and revealed a confident smile. "Of course. This time, I will give the Yun family a big surprise. That old bastard, Yun Zhongqi, actually joined forces with Ji Tianqing. He supported Ji Tianqing and destroyed my Duanmu family's herb garden. He caused my Duanmu family to fall into such a pitiful state. Furthermore, he wants to use the opportunity of Miracle Dr. Bailey's birthday celebration to gather all the influential people in Zhong State to discuss important matters. He wants to snatch Zhong State's herb market. Yun Zhongqi is so ruthless and wants to kill all of us. How can I let him go? During this birthday celebration, I will definitely cause chaos in Cloud Soul Palace and make Ji Tianqing and the Yun family become enemies." Hearing this, Xing Jian revealed a shocked and confused expression. He asked, "Master, Ji Tianqing and the Yun family have a close relationship. Yun Zhongqi likes him very much. How can they be enemies? What plan do you have?" Duanmu Huang revealed a meaningful expression and sneered, "You don't have to ask. You will know later." Not long after, light footsteps could be heard from outside the secret room. A cold female voice could be heard through the stone door. "Luo is here on orders to meet Master." Hearing this voice, Duanmu Huang revealed a faint smile and waved his hand to signal Xing Jian to open the stone door. After the stone door opened, a figure wearing a black robe and a cloak walked into the secret room. This person's figure was covered by a large black robe and her face was covered by a cloak. It was impossible to tell her appearance and age. Only her voice could tell that she was a young woman. Without a doubt, she was the spy that Duanmu Huang had arranged many years ago, Luo. Luo walked in front of Duanmu Huang and bowed respectfully. She said in a respectful tone, "Master, please give your orders." Duanmu Huang did not waste any time. He looked at Luo with a burning gaze and ordered sternly, "Luo, Ji Tianqing is now in Cloud Soul Palace. He is waiting to attend Miracle Dr. Bailey's birthday celebration. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.